so I think I'll share everyone's feeling that we're very happy to see finally Padmalocana Krishna prabhu.
The expectations are all wrong.
He's regional director of Harvard Business School, so he's looking after, I think, more than 10 countries in Southeast Asia region, organizing courses for Harvard Business, and he has agreed to come and teach professional Harvard Business course for our group, and the likes attract. We have very prominent leaders in here, including United Nations representatives and global entrepreneurs, and even 2 GBC members in here. And actually, Padmalocana Krishna prabhu, amazingly enough, not only got this course presented officially as part of Harvard Business Learning curriculum. Not only he got the support of Harvard Business staff for this course, as you will learn, but they've actually encouraged him to come and teach, and even facilitated that he's teaching here, even though it's done for free. Harvard Business School actually is paying me. He's paying his stay in my home, so which actually shows the potential that there are so many goodwill people around the world who would love to work with us, and everybody knows how expensive Harvard courses are. I heard it's $2,000 per head for the participation, or like a few $100,000 per week for the corporate group. But they've agreed to present this to ISKCON because we are not for profit. And so that's a very wonderful opportunity for all of us. So let's enthusiastically welcome officially Padmalocana Krishna prabhu.
Gets me a little bit nervous with all the stalwarts in this room. I'll try to calm myself down. My name is Prabhu, Padmalocana Krishna. I'm from Singapore. I've got a good friend here, my Kundanat, also from Singapore. I have been with Harvard Business School Publishing for about 5 years, and as Maharaj said, I'm responsible for business development in the region. While I live in Singapore, I travel throughout the region, so I'm perpetually jet-lagged. I travel to about 10 countries, including China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, etc. So what we do is, we work with large corporations, sharing with them best practices as far as leadership development is concerned. Why leadership development is so important for organizations. Organizations can really fail or make it big because of leadership. Right? So that is like the primary pillar of the Harvard Business School. Right? So Maharaj was saying that the company has paid me. So basically, this 3-4 days I am here, the company has said that okay, you don't have to apply for leave, you can take it as pro bono work. So I'm really appreciative of the kind gesture of my boss. You have received some materials already, but these are all the materials I will be passing to you in a soft copy. Lots of good stuff, which can be used for social enterprises, which will be used for development efforts in your individual countries. There's a lot of good stuff over here. I've got a chapter from a textbook which speaks about creating successful business models for social enterprises. Yeah, so I'm not a leadership expert. Let me tell you. I'm not a leadership expert. I'm a sales guy. Right? So what I've done is along the way, because we have to present to customers about our concepts, about leadership, etc., I've gained a lot of that. I'll try to share some of this with you. Right? Is that fine with all of you? Right? I like to do a lot of cold calling. So it would be great if you could, have either your card around here or put it onto your shirt. That will be very, very helpful. So what we will do today is speak a little bit about transformational leadership. What is transformational leadership? What is leadership? What is management? And then tomorrow we will go into strategic thinking. Why strategic thinking is important for corporations, for social enterprises. How do you look at strategic thinking in the context of not-for-profit organizations? Okay? And then, we will cover a little bit more on some of the business models available for social enterprises. What is innovation all about, etc. Okay? If you have any questions, stop me anytime. Right? I will not be answering, but some of our other peers over here will be answering. That's the Harvard method, right? Where you have the crowdsourcing of ideas. There's so much of collective genius in this class. So much of collective genius in this class. Each of us bring at least 20 years of experience, right, to the classroom. So some more, some fewer. Right? So there's a lot which you can learn from all our peers. Okay. We will be doing some case discussions in the next 4 days. Case discussions are like the pillar of Harvard Business School, right? Where we give you a case of a real world case, and then we get you to look at what went right, what went wrong, what could have been done differently, what are some of the lessons we can learn from those cases. Right, so this is the program for the next 4 days. Can you hear me clearly from the back, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good, right? So we will look at leadership frameworks. There are lots of leadership frameworks today. Lots. Alright? We will just look at about 6 of the key leadership frameworks which could be used for not-for-profit organizations. We will then look at what is our purpose? What is your purpose as an individual? What is authentic leadership? How can you be authentic as a leader? We'll then move on to looking at customer centricity. So we are a religious organization. Do we have customers? Who are our customers? Let's dwell a little bit into that. Have you thought about us as a customer-centric organization? We have customers. Who are the customers? Let's spend some time looking at that. Right? And then we will look at this multimedia case. If you look at Harvard, we are used to 35-page, 40, 50-page case discussions. Right? With probably 10 pages of annexes which you have to go in and deeply analyze data, etc. But times have changed. Nobody has so much of time nowadays. The corporate leaders have so little time. So what we have done at Harvard Business School is we have evolved some of these cases into multimedia cases. You just need to watch and then give your perspectives. That's day 1. Day 2, we will be going on to Mount Everest. Are you excited? Right? So that's going to be a simulation. I'm just praying to Krishna that the internet bandwidth is all fine, because we need some solid internet bandwidth. Okay? So it's a group activity where you will group together in groups of 5. One of you will be a topographer, one of you will be a photographer, one of you will be a medical doctor, alright, and one of you will just be an observer. How do you come in together to scale Mount Everest? And it's going to be competitive. I know in ISKCON we do not believe in competitions. Alright, it's going to be competitive. We are lucky to have 21 leaders tomorrow. So we will break into small groups of 5. And then we will run that simulation. Alright, so I've got my colleagues from the Harvard delivery team. They will be facilitating the session virtually. So they are the expert in the simulation. I thought it's best to get them to do the facilitation. You will play the simulation for about 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes. Then you will take a break, you will go for your lunch, etc. The team at Harvard will be analyzing your scores, and then they will come in and explain what went well, what went wrong. They'll get you to speak, etc. Is that fine?
Very well.
Good.
Not expect
But then there's a lot which we learn about leadership. There's a lot which we learn. I'm not telling you more. Then we'll move on to strategy frameworks. What is strategy? Everybody speaks about strategy, but how can you come up with a strategy for your organization? How can you come up with a strategy for your temple, for your new project? Is there a difference between a corporate strategy and a strategy for a social enterprise? There is. Alright. So I'll share with you some cases around that. And then we will look at a multimedia case, Aravind Hospital. Have you heard of Aravind Hospital? I'm glad you did not. Please don't do any research on it because we will learn tomorrow. Okay. It's a not-for-profit organization in India. Wonderful case discussion. I'm sure it'll enthuse you. Then we will go on to look at the fruits of Sherbrooke. That's another case. I've given that print out to you. Try to read it if you have the time. If you don't have the time, no problems. Okay. And then on the third day, we will look at how do you evolve from a not-for-profit organization to a profit organization. And we will look at innovation. What is disruptive innovation? Have you heard of Clay Christensen? Anybody else apart from Vaikuntana? You will know that at least I will ask. No? Very good. I'm happy. Blue Ocean Strategy. Very good. 3-box framework for strategy in social enterprises. Good. Multimedia case discussion, and then we will look at a social enterprise in India. And then the last day we will look at storytelling, a little bit about charisma building, etc. Although I am zero at charisma, but I look at what has been published at Harvard Business Review. Okay. Is that fine? That's a program?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Okay, so let's have an icebreaker right now. I did a short introduction, but I think it's only fair that you introduce yourselves. Right? So what I require you to do is choose a partner whom you have interacted the least in the past few days. Okay. 1 minute or 2 of your life story. Explain to them, your life story. I leave it to you. You decide what is life story. What excites you and what inspires you? Why did you decide to come here? And discuss one leadership quality of Srila Prabhupada. You have gone through a leadership program in the past few weeks, so just give me one. Right? And then we will get your partner to share what you have shared with him or her. Easy?
Yeah.
Is that fine? Okay, just to break the ice, everybody is so formally set. Let's have some vibrancy in the group. Can we start now? We will have 5 minutes. right pronunciation?
So actually my tree is from Latvia, but now she's living in London, England. And she wanted me to let you know that what inspired her is Japan and sharing about the consciousness with other people. And she came here to hope after she leaves that she can give more of her life to sharing the consciousness with other people. She's focusing on her work, she wants to give more to preaching to the consciousness after. And one of the qualities of Srila Prabhupada that inspired her is that Srila Prabhupada is very flexible when dealing with people. He's very open and always trying to make sure that everybody's happy.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Round of applause for yes.
Ratna Masuji, she is from USA. When she was 22, she left to travel for 4 years. Then she came back and was very much into yoga. And then she came across Krishna consciousness. And now she's living in Mayapur for 2 years. What excites and inspires her is to dance for Krishna. And she's here to be able to preach more and better. And she said that Srila Prabhupada inspires her that he's first class in all his duties.
Thank you, Mataji. Let's move on.
Yes, this is Olga. Olga is from Moscow, Russia. And she's living in Savannah, Georgia right now, and she's been in corporate English for 20 years. 8 years in America, 8 years in Savannah. Yes. What excites and inspires her? She is a yoga teacher, and she's inspired to teach others yoga and to help them to become joyful. Why did you decide to come here? She actually is a little bit curious about how to inspire people to come together. She wants to bring people together. Leadership quality in Srila Prabhupada, she really is inspired by humility. Srila Prabhupada's humility.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you very much.
Natalila Mataji. She served ISKCON almost 40 years. She was born in Caribbean, and she came to the United States at the age of 12. She inspired people to care about each other. She came to teach compassion and mediation class now, of course. And she learned in Srila Prabhupada his compassion.
So the good news is, Mataji, yesterday I was on HBR, Harvard Business Review webinar, right, by one of our top professors from the school. And he has just published a new book. And he says that the 3 qualities which differentiates the greatest leaders from the regular good leader is, number 1, mindfulness, number 2, compassion, and number 3, empathy and care. It's amazing, in the corporate world we have got Howard telling us that this spiritual portion is becoming so important. And that's the reason I personally believe that more and more of these large corporates are now being led by Indians. You realize that? That's something which I believe, but I'm not too sure. I mean, they grew up with this. This is like part of their fabric. Yeah. Let's move on. Mataji.
I am introducing Padmalocana Krishna, and she grew up in a storybook childhood, and from wealthy family. She was riding horses and swimming with ducks and swans and playing creative games and arts. But then after parents got divorced, mom took up her Native American practices, and she became a spiritualist. And Padmalocana went to art college and looked for a deeper spiritual life when she found devotees. So what inspires her are new projects in art and to take on deeper leadership qualities. And she wants to be better for her community, better leader. And the quality of Srila Prabhupada is determination.
Thank you, Mataji.
So I was hearing from Lalita Rita, and she said she spent her life in Croatia. She lived in the same town she grew up in for a long time, and she really enjoyed the outdoors. So she took up a career path in archaeology and studying and doing that sort of thing, and she ended up working in a museum in her hometown. She had told us prior that she would put labels on pots, and she was digging up, doing excavations, and doing different exhibitions, that sort of thing. But eventually she came to a point where she felt like that there wasn't enough meaning for her, so she took on, if she wanted to come into a spiritual life, she said she didn't want to continue doing endless digging. She gets excited and inspired by Sanskrit and different languages. That's something that really is compelling for her. And she, oh shoot, I forgot to write down why did I come here. She decided to come here because she wanted some focus and have a deeper intention in her life, a higher sense of purpose. And the leadership qualities that she was really inspired by with Srila Prabhupada was his his ability to travel all over the place and mobility.
Okay, what's interesting, Mataji, is you brought up a very important point about the need for a purpose in your life. Yeah, we will be discussing that later on. But let me share with you that in the corporate world, there are many leaders who reach a certain echelon and then they fail. Why? Because they are too stretched. There is not a single focused purpose in their lives. That's a Harvard Business Review research. So thank you very much, Mataji, for emerging this point.
This is Sangeeta, she's from Japan.
Ohayou gozaimasu.
So she grew up in Japan and moved around Japan a lot. She moved at least 10 times and changing schools also, and now she's traveling quite a bit. We just came back from Australia. And what excites her is sharing Krishna consciousness with new people. And she decided to come to this course after hearing about it from Maharaj and her now another technology, because she felt it would develop her spiritual life. And she liked Prabhupada's humility.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Yes, Mataji, would you like to share a little bit about Nanda Manjari?
Before she became a yoga, she wanted to become a yoga teacher, and there she wanted to teach a yoga philosophy, but it's not very popular, and now she has to take care of people. And she got inspired the Kirtan, it's a profession of Kirtan. Yes, why she decided to come here because the first I told her.
So you know each other before this?
Yes, we are friends.
Oh,
We haven't talked in a long time. We need to catch up now.
no hard and fast rules.
And then she joined, not now, so joined, and she spoke with Maharaj, and yes, she decided to come. She figured out Krishna
gets the Prabhupada's Thank you very much, Mataji. Prabhuji.
Spoke with Dennis Prabhu, and he is born in Russia and then moved to Israel and later on to Canada. And he worked in a construction company making infrastructure because he was inspired to earn a lot of money. But then he realized that money doesn't make happy. So he started to listen lectures from devotees who were explaining about material skills and knowledge. And he started to practice this and he realized it's working, and then that's how he came to Krishna consciousness. And he came here because he wants to learn how to utilize his material skills in Krishna consciousness. And what is inspiring him and Krishna Prabhupada is his global vision of this.
Global vision.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing, Prabhuji. Yes, Dennis Prabhu.
I'm introducing Sabush Prabhu. He was born in East Germany in an atheistic family. His dad was a pretty high-level manager in a hotel industry.
You will like this afternoon's case. We will pick your brains on certain behaviors later. Sorry, Dennis Prabhu.
After school, he was not very much interested in the material. He was very interested in spiritual. So he went to the Asian countries to practice different spiritual traditions. One of them was Taoism and Qigong. Then he, at the age of 23, he met the devotees, and ever since then he's traveling, preaching, and spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world. He came here to develop some skills that he can utilize and continue preaching, and meet like-minded people and see if he can team up and participate in various projects together. In Srila Prabhupada, he is inspired by resilience and persistence.
Resilience.
Oh, resilience. I call it zeal.
What's resilience?
Zeal is an energy.
Resilience.
Not too far away. Prabhuji, would you like to share?
Yes, this is Dmitry Prabhu. He is from Krasnoyar, from Siberia, and he knows devotees since 2010. He travels a lot. He travels with a group of devotees two times a year in India and Harinam all over India. And he likes to travel and in many places now. And he's most excited by the association of the Scholars, Gurus, and sannyasis, the senior devotees. And he's also very much excited to be in USA. He loves it there. He shared that last time he was in Boston for Srila Prabhupada's, Raya festival.
I was there too.
And he said that those was the
That's
best
my
days.
company's headquarters.
He said those was the best days in his life. And he decided. So he came here because Maharaj invited him to come here. The quality of Srila Prabhupada which excites him is Prabhupada's fearlessness.
I hate moving the page. There's no space.
We can post it if you want to do.
Yeah. Which number is that now? 10.
Krishna. My partner is Padmalocana Krishna, and he originally from Donetsk, Ukraine, but many years he lived in Germany. chanting. Yeah. And he come here because Bhakti Rasada Maharaj invited him. And one leadership quality of Srila Prabhupada, compassion.
Thank you very much, sir. Prabhu, will you team up with me?
He's from Rome, Italy originally, but currently lives in Mayapur now, and he has been starting doing a lot of Sankirtan travel and got into education, teaching in the Guru in Mayapur, and also working in the GBC on strategic leadership.
Or you should be teaching us.
And he's inspired by education and being serving the movement and going forward. And he's also to learn more about leadership. That's why he's coming here to learn more about it and get more inspiration. And he was mentioning which quality was that Srila Prabhupada was like human being, having emotions, feelings, being approachable, being people normally, also capable of being angry and just kind of like a normal person also. So it's kind of really one word. Maybe not maybe approachable or
But the word I use is normal.
normal.
Very nice.
That's why I said a human being.
Sure. Thank you very much,
Padmalocana Krishna Prabhu is from Köln in Germany, and he joined ISKCON at the young age of 17. He started the pilgrimage. He has also a very keen interest in seeing peace in the world. He's a peacemaker. He's into harmony. He's into synergy. And so he entered the United Nations field to promote unity in the world. And through this experience, through these feelings, he's also introducing ISKCON into this area. In fact, he presented it in the course here. And what inspires him is to create more harmony, more unity. The fact that he is a bit concerned, he sees ISKCON as a bit hyper decentralized, a bit fragmented as a movement. He would like to see more unity, more sense of commonality. And the quality of Srila Prabhupada inspires him is commitment.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
So I'm introducing Dave Madhav. Dave Madhav is from North Carolina. He was born in the US. In 2010, he had the calling to go to Detroit. He wasn't sure why, but he traveled to Detroit. And when he went to Detroit, he met the devotees, and he could understand that it was Paramatma guiding him in that direction.
What excites and inspires him?
Yeah, I don't remember the cooperation. So the quality that excites and inspires Prabhu is cooperation. And the reason he decided to come here is because he was invited by Maharaj, and he also wanted to see how he could improve as a leader. The leadership quality of Srila Prabhupada inspires him is a strong sense of purpose. Meaning that strong sense of purpose drove many things during the meeting.
I had the pleasure of speaking with Vaikuntha Prabhu. Turns out he was also in America for a little while, some places where I'm familiar. Toledo he studied, and then, which is just south of our preaching center now,
Stony Brook in New York, and eventually, on the instruction of his Guru Maharaj, he took up a PhD course in Singapore as a bioengineer. And so now he's working to help or understand and decide and assimilate things within the body so that you can implant certain things and the body will either accept them or reject them. And so he's, that's where his PhD thesis was, and I assume that's where his work is now, and that's sort of it. He's inspired by Srila Prabhupada's compassion also, and his purpose for coming here was to have the opportunity to be in Mayapur for a while, and the personal invitation of Maharaj, and the chance to improve his charisma and leadership.
What a number of leaders have been handpicked by you, Maharaj. Okay, Prabhu, please.
I had the pleasure of speaking to Jagadish Prabhu. And Jagadish Prabhu is originally from Israel. He was a very active sports enthusiast. He engaged in different sports, especially judo. And he grew bored by flipping people. I considered that it was more of a life than that. And that's when he met the devotees. He met the devotees at a young age of about 21. And he was so inspired by the association. He is inspired by Srila Prabhupada's books on Kirtan, and especially Srila Prabhupada's translations and purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And also the association of devotees. The quality that he appreciates, one of the qualities that he appreciates of Srila Prabhupada was Srila Prabhupada's ability to connect with people on the soul level and inspire anyone that he came in contact with.
Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu. Yes, Jagadish Das, what have you got to say about your partner?
I would like to introduce the Kabir Prabhu. He was involved very much in America in politics, and then he met Bhakti Swami in '89, and was very much inspired by his teaching and how he presents Krishna consciousness. And what inspires and excites him is Kirtan, and also the care program, especially the care for devotees care. And he decided to come here just to be in the Sangha of wonderful Vaishnavas. And also his wife, she's teaching the course, so they joined together, obviously. And the leadership quality in Srila Prabhupada is compassion.
Thank you very much. Prabhu? No?
So I have wanted to introduce Maharaj. He joined Krishna consciousness in 1989. Oh, he didn't share his story at all. And that is also cool. I know him since many years ago. And briefly, he joined us from 1989. And then he went for many responsible services. He was the president and he was always inspired to take care of those. He was teaching also people from zero to hero. Also in the Rosh
and he joined the movement in 1990. He's an ex-command officer in former Soviet army, and there was one episode from his life. I didn't know that. I was telling him, so tell me, like, how did you, because in Russia was saying, took birth, get married, and I said, you took birth, but you never got married. He said, I did. Just before the movement, he was married for 1 year, and because he joined the movement and he was so enthusiastic, his family kicked him out. So he graduated in a very short time. And as a board leader, he's always had leadership positions in managerial role, and been preaching from here, his family in the world, and taking care of the entire country as a GBC secretary and all. So, and actually, I asked him what's his inspiration to join the course. Well, he said what inspires him is team of the devotees, and what excites him is future perspectives of doing many things, Vaishnava Prabhupada, to fulfill that purpose of his life. And why he decided to come here, again, he said, because I invited him. And leadership quality in Srila Prabhupada, which inspires him the most, is Prabhupada's determination. So it's already regional secretary. Regional secretary.
Okay, I did not miss anybody, but Mataji, we can do that later. No worries. Are you alright? You want to take some rest? That's fine. Are you inspired? Okay, I'm really inspired, listening to all of you. It's great that the organization has got such great leaders, such great leadership qualities which you already have. And the sky is the limit, actually. The sky is the limit in bringing people together to work on projects with a social cause. Okay, so thank you very much. I think some of you may be concerned, hey, we have spent an hour doing this introduction. Is that good use of our time? I think it's alright, because we have enough time. We can always stretch beyond 6 p.m. Okay, I like this very much. I like this very much because this is exactly what the course is about. Some parts of it. Okay, so let's move on. A question for all of you. You spoke about Srila Prabhupada, you spoke about all your partners with lots of enthusiasm. Okay? So what was the most positive experience you had with a leader? I'll skip that. I'll skip that because you already spoke about Prabhupada, you had experience with Prabhupada via his books, via his lectures, etc. Let's skip this section. Let's move on to this. What was your least positive experience with a leader? When you think of this leader, you get nervous. When you think of this guy, you wonder, how can this guy be a leader? When you enter into his room, you feel nervous, you feel not comfortable at all. Alright, so would you like to share? What was your least positive experience or negative experience?
Without names, right?
Without names. So the earlier one was more around, someone who aspires you, inspires you. Okay? And the later it's more about, you don't want to have these qualities at all. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
There was one woman who came, I told the story once before, so sorry guys. There was one woman who came to our center, and she was like a senior god sister, and she was supposed to come help sort of create a culture in our community. And for whatever reason, it was a very difficult service for her. She's a very talented person, but she had a really hard time being with young, new people. It was very agitating for her. And so she ended up being very harsh and very negative, and would often find reasons to kind of push us down or make us not feel like we had any sort of good characteristics at all. And she sometimes would even put us against each other. But one thing I want to say about that is I hadn't seen her for a really long time, and every time I would get a glimpse of her, I would kind of like go in the opposite direction. But just recently, she's living here in Mayapur now, and she came up to me and sort of like, came to say hi to me in the temple. And since then, during Mangal Arati, I see her almost every day, and she's completely transformed. And she's very loving, very kind, very generous and thoughtful. At least that's been my experience of her so far. So that's the power of devotional service, I think. So I was very grateful to have that exchange with her, so now I don't feel like freaked out every time I see her. But it was a good portion of my devotional life where I wanted to steer clear from her as much as possible.
Thanks for that sharing. So I think that particular experience tells you that people evolve as leaders. Leadership can be taught. It's not that you are born with qualities and then you remain like this forever. Yeah, you saw how this lady, this Mataji, evolved with time. Anybody else? Yes, Prabhuji.
I had an experience with a leader. He was very insecure kind of guy, and he was experimenting with other people, and that is very bad.
So he was insecure, and was he like also working towards his own self-interests? Yeah. In a way. Alright, so those are not very positive qualities of leaders. Maybe they're not even leaders.
Well, he was in a position of a leader.
He was in a position.
Yeah.
Sad for the organization. Okay, anybody else? What about anger? Anyone who has
I have one
this?
story like that.
Yes.
A few years ago, we were organizing my spiritual master gas puja, Bhakti Maharaj, and I was coordinating the program, and there was a sannyasi, and I was sitting in the front because I was following the speakers, and he came to where I was sitting, and he said, "Mataji, get up, get up," and I was shocked. Because as you said, what was the most positive experience with a leader? My Bhakti Maharaj always trained me to, not think of being a lady, not think of being a woman's body. So I was really shocked. I just was surprised. I looked at him and he said, "Get up." And I just didn't, I thought, what? And then I called someone because I realized he needed a seat, he wanted to sit. I got someone to give him a seat. I called him to speak about Bhakti Maharaj. Obviously, that's why he was there. And I arranged for him to get prasad. I just used some of those tools that I learned from Bhakti Maharaj with him. And he was still not in such a nice mood. But anyway, I saw him like the next year in Mayapur. And when I saw him, he came like running to me to hug me. And I was like, what? This is a sannyasi. This is the same sannyasi. And he was like, "Mataji, Mataji, Mataji, I just want to tell you, I took the GBC leadership course, and I learned some tools and skills that really helped me." And so I just felt really grateful that in ISKCON there are some people that are trying to make positive changes, and it does have an impact on some of these leaders. And it might not be a big scale, but it is happening, and it happens for people personally. So that was a nice experience.
I think this self-assessment piece is so important. As a leader, as a manager, it's important for us to self-assess ourselves. That's so important. And then evolve ourselves. Right? So that brings me to the next point actually. Let's look at this questionnaire. Why couldn't I think you will struggle without your glasses? Can you see? Yeah? This is a self-assessment questionnaire. Self-assessment is so important. You can develop yourself as a leader. You can put the roof up, you can put up the walls, etc. But then if the foundation is not there, you will just collapse. Mataji, you brought an excellent example. Why did the sannyasi evolve? He evolved after self-assessing where his critical gaps are. But self-assessment is not necessarily only on critical gaps. You may have a strength and take that opportunity to strengthen that strength further. That's Howard's perspective. Weakness, try to reduce that. Wherever you are strong, try to improve on that. Okay? So let's look at this questionnaire. There are 15 questions over here. I hate using paper, so that's the reason why I'm not giving you a piece of paper. But what you can do is, just look at all these questions and rate yourself where you are. Be authentic, alright? So not necessarily that you are already a leader today or a team leader. I know not everybody is a team leader, but you might be working in small groups. You might be working in small groups. Leadership can also be lateral. It's not necessarily that it has to be hierarchical. Alright, sometimes you work in small groups, small Mataji projects, etc. Let's assess ourselves. Where do you feel you are? There are some trick questions in all self-assessments. Just take about 5 minutes to look at all of this. And by the way, all of these notes will be given to you. Right, so I'll be giving a copy of all of these slides to all of you. If you want the video, I can also give you, I'll be playing lots of videos. And the good thing is that, some of the professors will be coming and speaking in our class today, virtually via short videos. Because everybody has its own style of learning. Some people love learning through short bite-sized videos, some through experiential, some through exercises like this. I'll just shut that off. Feel free to come in front to have a look at the questions in case you can't see from the back. Too small? But you will have this in the slides. Tonight or tomorrow I will email to all. Okay? Right. Can you just do a summation of what the score is for all of the questions? So maybe for the first one it was 1, second one was 2, third one was 1, blah 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 blah. You just add what the numbers were.
We're supposed to be finished by now?
No, you can take your time. Can I proceed? You know, this is just a self-assessment. And I can see that most of you are scoring a 3 or a 4. That's great. Which means that you're very strong in all of this. Right? Best case scenario, you would be getting 60 marks, 60 points. That means you are a great leader. You don't even need to bother about any leadership development. Okay? But personally, when I look at myself, I personally feel that I've got lots of gaps. Right? I've got a big team in Asia, and I'll tell you my own story. Okay? About 15 years ago, I was a great salesperson, I was a great business development guy. And what did my company do? My company said, okay, Pradeep, you're doing a great job as an individual contributor, we will promote you to be the manager, to lead a team. Right? It's not going to be in Singapore, it's going to be in India. And I was like excited, you know. My wife was saying, no, you shouldn't go, you know, kids will get sick, etc. And I went up to a devotee friend who introduced me to Krishna consciousness. And the devotee friend told me that if you keep Krishna in the center of your decision making, you're going to Delhi, it's just 1.5 hours away from Vrindavan. Things will be great. So it was a 3-year assignment, but then it extended into 5 years. The best 5 years of my life. But when I started to lead a team, my God, it was disastrous. Just because I was good at my individual contributor activity, that does not make me a manager. No, I learned it the hard way. And you know, there were poison letters going up to the CEO of the company. Is India short of a good leader? We are a population of 1 billion people. Do we need someone from Singapore to come and lead us? This is what he has done to us. I went through this and I sat down with a coach and I realized that, my God, whatever I was doing out of instinct, thinking that it's authentic, it was a failure. Right? So just like this, when you are doing a self-assessment, be authentic to yourself. This is great. This is a great assessment because when I discuss the 6 pillars or the 6 domains of leadership later on, you will realize that some of these questions map back to these 6 domains. Okay? I don't need the answer from you. Right? You can keep it to yourself. But then, just be mindful of this because I think it encompasses a very holistic aspect of leadership. Any questions before I move on? Okay. Alright, so now we start our course. That was just a primer. So let's look at leadership. What is leadership? Right. I've got the chairperson from the Harvard Business School giving a 2-minute glimpse of what leadership is all about.
Leaders are actually more made than born. Most people don't believe that no matter what you do, but the research is pretty clear about that. We actually learn to lead from our experiences and from our relationships. When I meet executives who've been at it for 30 years, they still see that there's lots for them to learn, that the world is changing and new challenges are coming. No matter where I go in the world, what I hear is leadership is a strategic issue for us as a country, as a company. We can't get done what we need to get done because we don't have enough leadership. If I want to study leadership in an organization, I'd spend maybe about a month in that organization simply watching people as they do their work.
And I think one of the big transformations we've been making over the last couple of years here in the States is we didn't want to be a follow brand or like someone else brand, we wanted to be a leader brand.
The research tells us that if the leader behaves a particular way, people are going to copy that leader's behavior. When you go into organizations, you tend to see there is a style of leadership that people can describe for you. So what do you need to do to create that context where people really can amplify their talents and passions, develop them, and work together collaboratively to do something that really matters? I've come to understand that leadership is not just about people at the top, it's actually about people throughout the organization. When you get a chance to lead, it's a real privilege. It's an honor. People are actually betting on you that you're going to be able to get this done. And they often know that it's a stretch assignment for you. There's joys, there's pleasures, and there's also going to be challenges. And then on the other hand, if you've led a group and that group has really become more cohesive in a positive way, and you've created a culture in which people feel good about the work, boy, it really makes your heart sing. I have deep respect for people who are willing and able to lead. Deep respect takes a lot of courage. If you get a chance to lead, then you get a chance to give voice to your values and build organizations that you think will allow for people to lead fulfilling lives and actually contribute to an organization whose purpose you care about. You're going to make some missteps, but as long as you're open to learning from those missteps and adapting yourself and working on yourself, you're going to make a difference.
I like that video very much. It tells me a lot about leadership. It tells me that you are given an opportunity to lead a project, the opportunity to lead a team. Right? How do you ensure that you are empowering your leaders? Any other reflections on this video? Yes, sir.
I think the important point which I like is that leaders are taught. And those who have maybe the potential, they need to constantly learn and evolve.
It's a very good point. Leadership can be taught, can be learned, right? And it doesn't stop there. You keep on evolving as a leader. There's so much of research which is produced, so much of research, right? And what happens in the research is they look at the top performing leaders, the top performing CEOs. What are some of the traits which are there in common? But you know something? If you look at a scan of the top 1,000 CEOs in the world, there isn't a single trait which funnels them into one space. No. We will learn all of this later. Any other reflections? Why I like reflections is as follows. When you reflect on your learnings, when you reflect on your experiences, your performance is 20% better as a leader. This is a Harvard research. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on then. So what is leadership? Finally, what is leadership? A leader is a person who influences others. Okay? Captures your heart and the mind of others. Right? And then he makes things possible for the organization. He gets things done. He orchestrates resources. He empowers people to get things done. Okay? So very important is a leader must influence others. It is not directing always. Sometimes you need to direct when there is a crisis. But in other cases, it's about influencing and persuading people and enabling coordinated action in an organization. You just do not influence people, empower them and then leave it. No. You also need to coordinate to ensure that things get done. Very important. You can't just empower and leave it. Okay? You get the difference? Good. So leadership is a set of behaviors and their effects. Right? Okay, what is leadership not? We have already discussed. It is not a set of traits that cannot be developed or modified. Mataji, you explained how a sannyasi was able to evolve for the better. Because it can be learned when you do some self-reflection. And leadership does not always come with formal authority or position. You don't need that authority to be a leader. There are times when you can be a leader in a lateral group. I like this quote from Prabhupada. Bhagavatam 1.15.29. Everyone must be a real leader. So Prabhupada is saying that everybody can be a leader. This is not an inborn trait in you. Then people will be there. Okay. So this is something from Warren, but he's like a leadership guru. Okay, there's so much he has spoken about leadership. And he says that it involves creating meaning in people. Just look at ISKCON as a movement today. Just look at ISKCON. Why is it we have got hundreds and thousands of people who are in the movement today? Why? Of course it can get better. But why? Because they feel there is a meaning to it. They feel there is a meaning to it. You're not paying people to become a member of your organization. No. You're not paying people. But you have influenced them to join you. Right? So good leaders make people feel that they are at the heart of things. They are at the center of things, not at the periphery. I'll give you another example from my own life. I've got a personal assistant who assists me in making appointments. Alright? Assists me in my travel expenses, my claims, and doing all of that stuff. And then at the end of the month, I'm always so grateful to her. I'll tell her that, if you have not helped me, life would be a nightmare for me. I will not have the time to do this. Just make her feel that she's the center of your activities and be authentic about it. Because if I were to do that work, then I cannot focus on something else. Forget about whether it's a bigger or a smaller objective, but if I was doing all of this, I could not. Right? So it's important to get people, anybody, even in the corporate world, you will call them the tea ladies. Someone who makes tea for the organization, who ensures that all the fridge, the drinks are stocked up, etc. Make that person feel that she's the center of this. Alright? That's compassion, that's care. Right? Not at the periphery. Everyone feels he or she is making a difference to the success of the organization. That's very important. It's important to link that whatever you do finally goes back to the overall vision and strategy of the company. You link it back. Right? When that happens, people will feel that they are centered, and that gives work meaning. Yes.
Can we rephrase that actually we should actively express our gratitude? Because sometimes we are grateful, but we're not expressing it for some reason, and it doesn't work.
Okay, so I'll give you a corporate example. If you look at Tata Hotels, what they do is whenever an employee does a great job, whenever there's an aha moment for a client, within 48 hours, this person will be rewarded with a praise, with a letter, with a certificate, etc. That is, institutionalizing gratitude. But from our side, I think it's very, very important. But it's important to be authentic about it. But sometimes when you do it too often, it doesn't feel too authentic too. And it's important to also tie it back to that incidents which caused you to be to be grateful to that person. When you just make it general, oh yeah, Prabhu, I'm very, very thankful. Thankful for what? The other party will feel that, okay, he is thankful to me because I had done this. He can single out an activity for me where I have made a difference. Okay. Alright. And what is management? There is a difference between leadership and management. Leadership is about influencing people without even rewarding them. And that's what ISKCON is all about. And management works through rewards and punishment and other behavioral and attention channeling channels. So we need this. And leadership is also important during a crisis. When there's change, when there's transformation required. So that's the difference. I just want you to reflect on this. What does ISKCON require? Do you require just management? Or is it leadership? We are not rewarded as ISKCON members. Nobody is rewarded. No. Why? It's more like leadership, definitely why. And what about social enterprises? Tomorrow you will be leading a social enterprise, you will be an innovator, etc. It's not just management skills which are required. You need to be able to influence people. Okay? Can I go on? Alright, so now let's look at transformational leadership. Before looking at transformational leadership, let's look at transactional leadership. What is transactional leadership? It's just the regular roles, functions, behavior within an existing culture. Okay, within an existing culture. But transformation is about changing the culture. It's about changing the culture. Just look at Srila Prabhupada. When he started the movement in 1960s, what was the culture? What was the de facto culture at that time? He was able to change the mindsets of people. That is a cultural change, and for that you will require transformational leadership. If today you are looking at coming up with a brand new initiative which is going to be challenging your set organization's culture, you need to be able to exercise transformational leadership. I'll explain to you what are the traits of transformational leadership. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, the question, when the proper culture is established,
yes,
what happened to transformational leadership? Because you don't, it's the perfect culture.
Yes.
Perfect
question. Wonderful question. I'm coming to that. There's a case of a Japanese company which I will be showing later on. The Japanese company, Rakuten. Okay, you know Rakuten. Just like you have Amazon, Rakuten is the e-commerce leader of Japan. It has got a 90% market share in Japan. Right? Solid player. But then the CEO, Mikitani-san, Hiroshi Mikitani-san, he felt that I've reached to the brink. What do I do next? I need to transform the culture. If I do not transform the culture, we will be disrupted. What does he do later on? I will come to that shortly. But then I was speaking about Srila Prabhupada, his transformational leadership. Let's look at this particular video where he really showed the kind of leadership which we require in today's world. Just 1 2-minute clip. It has transformed my life, frankly. And I teach, the Bhagavad Gita to newcomers altogether. And I always put this as the last video they watch. I've done this for about 120 participants in Singapore since the beginning of last year. This particular video has transformed 20 lives, and there are 20 devotees today just because of maybe the whole Bhagavad Gita, but also some parts of this video. Okay? Let's look at this video. I'm sure you would have watched it before, but
we have been here for many lifetimes performing sinful activities. So is it possible to counteract all those sinful activities in one lifetime, or does it require
1 minute. That is Krishna consciousness. 1 minute.
Conviction.
You are not reading Bhagavad Gita? What Krishna said? Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam saranam braja amta sarva pape mokshayan.
Look at the passion.
You surrender to me, give up your all business. I will give you relief from all sinful reactions. Immediately. We take us 1 minute. My dear Krishna, I was forgotten, now I understand, I fully surrender. Then you become immediately free from all sin. Without any reservation, without any politics. If you fully surrender, Krishna is assuring, Aham tva sarva papi, amokkesa, masucho. He reassures. Don't worry whether I will be able to give you relief from all tears. Masucho. Finish, guaranteed. You do this. So, how much time it requires to surrender to Krishna? Surrender means you surrender and what? As Krishna says. That is what Krishna said to do. Manmana bhavavan bhakta madhyajimam namaskuru. 4 things. You always think of me and you become my devotee, you worship me and offer your respect, full obeisance is that. You do these 4 things. That is full surrender. Mami vastasya, asamsa. Then you come to me without end. Everything is there. Krishna has given everything fully. If you accept it, then life is very simple. There is no difficulty.
So Prabhupada is transforming lives. What are the characteristics of transformational leadership? Conviction. When you speak, you are full of conviction. You convince the other party. Alright? You make the connection with those participants. You communicate clearly to them. And when you communicate, you also tell them, you are drawing the links for them to Krishna. Okay? To the higher purpose. In a corporate world, you link back to the vision of the company. He does this with so much of passion, and he does it with the vision that he will bring you back. I classify that as transformational leadership. This is not from Harvard, but I believe that this is transformation. Alright, any questions, any reflections on this video? Reflection is my favorite word in this class. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's move on. So leadership is really about the creative task, doing something different. Transformational leadership, okay? Creative task, doing something different and changing the culture for the better. Alright, so I spoke about all of this is about inspiring, making followers believe that they can achieve even the most impossible goals. That was what Prabhupada was telling them. We are all here because of Prabhupada. Because he convinced us that we can achieve the most impossible goal. Alright? And such leaders, they come up with a vision that is not only bold, but it's aspirational. For example, let's be number 1. Let's be the top organization. Let's be the best social enterprise. So now let me speak about Rakuten's story. But before that, just reflect on this particular cartoon over here. The department of people waiting for something to happen. The department of people who actually make things happen. And finally, the department of people who sit around asking, what happened? These are different kinds of leaders. Okay, so, Rakuten's story. Would you like to share with us? You're from Japan. Yes.
I think it's the first company to do it. And no one did it before him. And now he tried to not only internet for us, and she tried to do a lot of things.
Yes, he bought over many small companies, etc.
Yes, for example, professional baseball team, body, and with the baseball team, he advertised the company to not only Japanese, also overseas.
Alright, so what essentially he did was, one fine day on the 1st of March, year 2010, he had a town hall with 8,000 of his leaders. 8,000. 5,000 were in Japan, and 3,000 of them, they dialed in. And he said that, look, we have reached 90% penetration in Japan. We need to go out of Japan in a big way. But look at my Japanese colleagues over here. you can't speak the level of English which is required for international commerce. You can't. We need to change the culture of this company. I'm giving everybody 2 years. Okay? I'll empower you to improve your English. 2 years. That's all I'm giving you. You change, you evolve, you improve your English. I'll give you all the necessary assets. I'll give you all the necessary empowerment, training, enablement. Within 2 years, you need to be able to speak good business English.
Right.
Okay, 2 years. If you are not aligned with the company's vision, then I'm sorry, I will not be able to promote you in the organization in future. Okay? But I assure you that from my side, I will ensure that you are empaneled, you are empowered, you are given all the necessary trainings to do this. My question to you, 2 years later, on the 28th of February 2012, how many of them could speak Japanese really well like our colleagues over here? English, not Japanese English, English. How many of them? Everybody? There will always be naughty ones like me. 90 to 95% of them could speak English. So what did he do? He transformed the organization. He changed the culture of the organization. It is possible.
I have a question.
Yes.
We're dealing with Japanese people, right? Here as an example. And we know Japanese, very determined people. So some other culture, it wouldn't work, it wouldn't give that result, actually. 95%, because we know Japanese, when they have the goal, that's it. Very focused people. But others say like, that's a good example. I have Russians as an example. Very different people. You can't really motivate them as an example. So you wouldn't give that kind of result.
I agree, but at the same time, he also managed to change the culture in Brazil. Even the Brazilian folks, they had a huge enterprise in Brazil. He also changed them. Those who could not, they left the organization, and some of them felt good because, hey, the company is investing in my education, why not? It's good for me, let me learn English. After 2 years, I will go somewhere else. Yes?
I mean, in this particular example, I don't particularly feel so much of leadership and charisma. Yes, they have job. If they don't step up to it, they will lose well-paid jobs. So there's a lot of things at stake. So they are motivated not by his leadership qualities, but the necessity of the hour. If they're motivated by their position, by promotion. So 2 years, I think somebody can just, and plus they're given facilities, so it would be stupid not to step on it. If you're slow, if you're like really not able to, you will step down. But if you're able, you will take the opportunity.
Correct. So what I'm trying to emphasize right now is more the cultural aspect of it. And he had a vision to change the organization. More from that point. Alright, so let's begin Dani side. So it's one, yes ma'am.
I wanted to, this is just a reflection I was having, that for one person to get that kind of a teamship, to make a change like that, that's pretty phenomenal. I mean, just one person making that, yeah.
He's a Harvard alumni, first and foremost. Harvard alumni, and secondly, the Harvard Business School has written 2 books on this initiative. And there are also some case discussions, case studies which I can share with you about transforming culture, bringing about institutionalization, etc.
Actually, I worked in Japan before, and on that time, I received the English message from like ink, but usually we go to meeting ask the person to do it.
Correct. And you know, what also happened, the American folks, for example, who were working for Rakuten in the US, all the while, you know, whenever they were like, you know, the Japanese are very regimental about procedures, etc. You know, whenever they used to come over to Japan, you know, nothing was properly translated, it was all in Japanese, the Americans were having a gala time. But once this Englishization happened, the manuals were now coming in the English language to all the Americans, and it was a wake-up call for them. It was also a cultural change, you know, from a little bit more laissez-faire working in a Japanese organization to being a little bit more active. Okay, so now let's move on to the leadership pyramid. So what I've covered in the last 1 hour is a little bit on transformational leadership. Now we will look at the leadership pyramid, and which is the reason why I wanted to cover this is because in my opinion, and also, you know, in the opinion of many other leadership gurus, this is the most evolved framework on leadership. It's one of the most evolved framework on leadership. Why? Because it brings social work, it brings psychology, it brings sociology, political science, and leadership all together. Okay? So there are 6 domains of leadership. Okay, this is by Professor Sim Sitkin and Alan King from the Duke University. Not from Harvard, from Duke University. I love this particular principle. And earlier on, when you did this questionnaire, some of those questionnaires are mapping into this leadership framework. So the second leadership framework which we discussed today is this leadership domains framework. So essentially what it tells you is that leadership, you can look at it from different angles. Personal leadership, relational, contextual leadership, inspirational, supportive, and finally, responsible and ethical leadership. And there's interrelationship between all of these domains. The foundation of leadership are these 3. Personal leadership, relational leadership, and contextual leadership. These are the 3 foundations. Okay? And then inspirational leadership and supportive leadership sits on this foundation. At the apex of it is responsible leadership. Now let me go through one by one. Okay? Just remember this is foundation. And then this sits on this sits on this is the top. So what is personal leadership? Personal leadership is about being an authentic leader. Not a fake one. Being authentic. At the same time, being able to manage your emotions. Authentic doesn't mean that you just go in and blurt out whatever, you know, like someone saying, move away, this is my space. You're supposed to be seated somewhere. No, that's not being authentic. Although it comes out naturally from him, but he was not able to manage his emotions. That's not authentic. So we start off by looking at personal leadership, then we move on to looking at relational leadership. How do you form trusting relationships with your colleagues, with your partners, laterally with your bosses, and as well as people who are reporting to you? That is relational leadership. The third leadership is contextual leadership. Okay? How do you give meaning to a team? How do you bring the team together? This whole principle of coherence. And then, building on personal and relational leadership, you have inspirational leadership. So what inspirational leadership does is, when you are authentic, and when you have formed solid relationships with your people, then automatically you start inspiring them. got solid relationships with your people, laterally, up, down, and you are able to form strong, cohesive teams, then you get into a culture of being supportive. You become a supportive leader. And finally, if a person is great in personal leadership, relational leadership, forming teams, coherence within team, meaning within the team, being able to inspire, supportive of the team even in the times of failure, then this is the aspect of responsible leadership. We will go in a little bit deeper into all of this. I will spend more time on personal leadership because I think this is the most important for all of us. Any questions before I move on? It might sound academic, but I want to, when we play some exercises, etc., you will get a good feel of it. Yes, sir.
Very nice, profound. What comes to my mind when we're speaking about different blocks, does it mean that we have organization, we have people, those who, let's say, they grew to a certain level, somebody not able to manage his own qualities and feelings, and he stops there. Somebody went through that and just somehow developed the relationships, but he just kind of doesn't know how to put things together. So inspiration doesn't come. Though he's a very nice person, but somehow he's not, etc. etc. So it's like
it's a building block.
Right.
Exactly. This is the foundation. This is built on this. But I like your point, Prabhu.
Not everybody can grow immediately responsible for this. Well, but what happens very often we see the person and we're dropping big responsibility on him, but he happens to be only on relationship level or personal struggle.
That is the flaw which many organizations face. Just because he can do something well, just a solid individual contributor, my company pushed me to managing a team of 80 people, directly or indirectly. And that's where we feel. This is a solid model. And coming back to your point, there's going to be one devotee who's going to be speaking on, he's a coach himself, he's going to be speaking on the 8 habits of highly successful people?
No, it's different.
Yeah. So he will cover this. I have not spoken with him, but then it's also in my slide actually. Can I come to that now immediately? It's a lot, huh? But a lot of nice videos also, which will inspire you. Yes. This is Jim Collins' level 5 leaders. The first level is highly capable individual. Then you move on. They become contributing team member. And then competent manager, effective leader, and finally level 5 executive is one who has got all of this, an excellent leader. But what differentiates him from anyone else is the humility which he has. Doesn't mean that the most senior CEO, the highest person, can be a proud person. No. Jim Collins has done an extensive research around it, and he says that what differentiates a great leader from a not so great leader is the humility which he has. When something goes wrong, he will come in front and say that, okay, look, I take responsibility for this. But if something goes right, he's not going to be saying, hey, I'm the one who actually did this, It's my team who has done this great job. If not for them, the success would not be there. That is a level 5 leader. Okay. Very, very well researched. Yes, Maharaj?
Yeah, I remember another Prabhu shared with me when he was doing a corporate presentation, and he just dropped the 3rd verse of Shikshastra to those corporate leaders, and they were like, flabbergasted by that, and they were asking him to explain it in detail, what does it mean to be
Collins level 5, I will just go through a little bit of it, but I think Prabhu will be discussing the other aspect of leadership, which is the whatever. Okay. Just tell me when you need a break. I see some of you all are already yawning. Prasadim's at 1:30, right?
Yes.
Prasadim's at 1:30.
1:30.
Okay, so that's the 6 domains. Let's look at personal leadership now. Let's do that. Just personal leadership. Okay? I will take at least about 30 to 40 minutes of this. So personal leadership is about developing and exhibiting authentic leadership. Okay? And it's based on your own values. You know, Krishna speaks about your nature in the Bhagavad Gita. When we are born, the 3 modes of material nature are already attacking on us. It produces our nature. So authentic leadership is about exhibiting this nature. Alright, be yourself. Don't fake it. Just be yourself. People can see through you when you fake it. There are times, when I speak to certain leaders, etc., in my organization, I can just feel that it just doesn't resonate. The behavior of this person, the sweet language she's putting through, etc., it just doesn't resonate. So this aspect of authenticity is so important for us. Okay? So let's move on. You need to develop these aspects of your personality that enhances your leadership and work to control those aspects that harm your leadership. Doesn't mean that authentic leadership, you just speak out whatever you want. Okay? You need to control that aspects of it which can harm your leadership. And wherever you are strong, you strengthen it further. As an authentic leadership, as an authentic leader, you also create and convey capability. You tell the team that this is what I am capable of. This is where I am vulnerable. No harm in telling your team that these are areas which I am not good at. It's alright. It's fine to be vulnerable. When you are vulnerable, when you tell your people that you are vulnerable, number one, you are being humble. When you are being humble, your team cannot touch on certain buttons on you to make you angry. It works. When you are humble, and when you have shown your cards to people that I feel these are certain gaps which I want to develop myself on, people will not start playing games with you. Because you are also self-aware of yourself. And in authentic leadership, you also demonstrate courage and passion. This is my vision, this is what I want to do. And let's do it together. And a very important principle in authentic leadership is you must let people see you. Okay? You must let people see you, your beliefs and your values. It's very, very important. Show vulnerability and at the same time you convey your humanness to employees so that they are safe with you. Okay? They know what your expectations are, etc. So this is just a primer of personal leadership and authentic leadership. We have an exercise for you on authentic leadership. Did you have time to read those 2 articles? Okay, that's good. Right? So once personal authenticity is established, okay, then you become very, very mindful and you reflect on everything. You do not just jump on something. You take time to reflect, just like how Arjuna took time to reflect before he started getting into the war. Take time out. And then, once personal authenticity is also established, you also try to look for this fit and how it aligns your people together. When people are unsure that their leaders share their values, they become suspicious that they may be led to something or some end that they will not value. They will feel being duped into it. So that's the personal leadership aspect of it. It's a little bit like common sense, But unfortunately, many leaders are not able to execute this because of that false ego. Not false ego, because of that ego. Okay? Because of that ego. Not wanting to be vulnerable. So, when you are good at personal leadership, if you are effective at personal leadership, what does it do? It yields credibility. You become a credible person. People can trust you. Any questions? Yes, Prabhu.
You were talking about time frame.
Yes.
So it seems to be very individual. How long will it take for a person to become an authentic leader? So in your own experience, if somebody has a good potential and he's enthusiastic and doing his work, what he should be doing, how long will it take?
It depends on the individual. Number one.
Yeah.
Whether he has time, how's his emotional intelligence? This self-awareness thing is so important. Is he self-aware? Is the organization helping him to be aware of his flaws and his strengths? Number one. Number two, does he have a coaching partner? Does he have a leader who is able to coach him? To remove that blind spots. That is also very important. And thirdly, I think it's important for him to be provided a safe haven to practice this leadership. If he does mistakes, no problems, it's a safe haven. The leader will tell him that no problem. Okay? You have done a mistake, it's not very expensive. It's important that you learn from this mistake fast. In fact, Tata Sons, one of the largest conglomerate in India, they have this principle. Every year they have got 2 awards which goes out for the best failure. Yes, the best failure. And the award goes out for number 1, the failure which happened but which allowed the team members and the leader to really learn so much from it that they succeeded in future. Alright, so they give out 2 of these awards. I think that's a good principle. Yes,
I have one question to the previous slide. And my question is, sharing the values means you tell the values or you have to say values?
Value systems can be different.
Just you share yours.
But the personal values may be different, but there will be some values which will finally funnel to the values which the company is looking for. I may have a set of values. Some of them is aligned to the culture of the company. Some of them may not be. That's my understanding. Anybody wants to correct me?
No, it's just it was like because you can use sharing this. You tell the people about your values, or sharing is you have to say it. So how is it sharing is used in this?
Okay, so in this case of authentic leadership, if you go back to this slide, the last point over here, you show your vulnerability and convey your humanness by sharing, telling them about your values, essentially. So, earlier on when I started today's program, I told you that there was some research on 1,000 different CEOs thinking that could there be a cookie cutter approach to leadership which you can emulate, just because Maharaj does a great job, he's charismatic, etc. This is how he does it. Can everybody just follow him? No. Research has shown that, in fact, there are no studies to date which has revealed a clear profile of an ideal leader. Therefore, there's no cookie cutter approach to leadership, no universal characteristics, no universal traits, skill, style, which has led to success. Okay. So, and it's clear, you cannot be authentic by just imitating somebody. It has to come from your personal experience. some childhood stuff which has triggered this. Your nature, depending on the three modes of material nature, etc. Okay? So as authentic leaders, these are 5 things which we need to know. Number 1 is, we must understand our purpose, exactly what Mataji said earlier on. You need to know what's your purpose and demonstrate a passion for it. Do all of you have a purpose? Yes? Well articulated? Have you documented it? How many have? Great. Okay. Nice. So and are you passionate about it?
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. You practice your values consistently. It's not like today I chant my 16 rounds and tomorrow because I'm busy I don't do that. Okay. You find a calling to lead, and they lead from their heart and also from the head. Just not passion from the heart, oh yeah, just a soft side. I also use my common sense in leading people. And then we spoke about the meaningful relationship side of it. And then you also practice some self-discipline. This is the theoretical side of authentic leadership. We will do a little bit of exercises in short. Any questions on this?
Excuse me, I don't have a question per se, but I was appreciating the slide from Warren Buffett. And I believe this number 3 is to lead from the heart as well as the head. That was one of his statements. And then, of course, on following slides, you cited Srila Prabhupada and how he used that for the 20 people that became devotees, and how that example of Srila Prabhupada leading from his heart as well as his head. And I sometimes experience leadership from the head, not as much from the heart. And you're sharing that both are equally important. Just now you shared more so that a leader needs to really be aware of sharing from the head. So sometimes I find that a little confusing for someone that's aspiring to become a leader or aspiring to be a leader.
Very good question, Mataji. Can I just immediately bring you to this part? Okay. Actually, it is not just the head and the heart. It's a little bit more than that. Okay. Authenticity is the alignment of the head, the heart, the mouth, and the feet also. Mouth wide, what you speak. Feet, the way you act. All of this has to align. Yeah? So when what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do, all of this has to be aligned actually. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's just an extension of the earlier point. Okay. So the challenge is for us to understand ourselves well enough to discover where we can use our leadership gifts to serve others. Some exercises for this, but we will wait for the time. Thank you very much. So we will reconvene at 3:30. I think I'm a little bit slow, but I'll try to bring along your laptop. Okay. How many of you do not have a laptop? Okay. You have a smartphone, mobile phone. It's just that you struggle with seeing it. But everybody needs his own connection, his own device. Only then you can take a simulation.
How good Wi-Fi is strong?
Should be fine. They're not playing videos, etc. If anybody has a spare mobile phone or a spare laptop, you want to bring it along for your friends. Okay. So a few of them are not here. I will not wait. Let's just continue. Okay. So point to note is that I had actually come up with, not I, but we have come up with some exercises on authentic leadership. How do you go about finding your true north? How do you go about finding out, what's your authentic purpose? How do you reflect on what happened during your childhood? What happened during some of the most difficult instances in life, which got you to start thinking from a different angle altogether. So it's a solid exercise, very, very good exercise. I've sent the materials to you already on the first day. In fact, Maharaj, you have forwarded them to you. There were 2 articles and an exercise. That exercise would have taken 1 hour to complete, but I do not have the luxury of that 1 hour today. So I would suggest that do it at your leisure. There's no right or wrong answer. It is just how you want or how you perceive your leadership style to be, depending on your own personal nature, etc. Correct? Take time to do it. I think it's a very good process. I personally feel it has made me much more aware of my own style of doing things. Alright. So one whole section has been left out. Okay. Under personal leadership, I left out the authentic leadership detailed discussion, but it's all in your notes, in the article. Let's move on to relational leadership. Anyone recalls what is relational leadership? It's about relations. Relations with your bosses, relations with your laterals, relations with people who report into you. Right? So it's very, very important for us to foster this interpersonal emotional connection. Yeah? Number 1. Number 2 is, that's what Mataji said, the compassion, the humility which comes from you, the empathy and the care. Show concern, understanding and respect for everyone. That's really important. Okay? For you to build that relational leadership, this is a very important pillar. Then we move on. And everyone wants to be seen as fairly treated. Okay? There shouldn't be a bias or prejudice, and everyone wants to be listened. I had a manager, he used to tell me that, Pradeep, Padmalocana, no, they do not know me as Padmalocana. Pradeep, if an employee comes over to my room and when he leaves, he feels that he has failed, I would think that I as a leader have failed. Very, very strong. It really got me to start thinking, wow, what a solid value he has. If somebody comes over and when he leaves the room, he feels demoralized, he feels failed, then as a leader, I have failed actually. Right? So everyone wants to be listened to and to be fairly treated. And as a leader, as a relational leader, be honest. If something is not right, be upfront about it, but at the same time explain to the employees or explain to your people that this is how it could have been done, but it's okay. We learn together. And look at the needs of your people. Very important. If you can connect to the needs, connect to the soul, you will be an excellent relation. Any questions? Yes, bro.
It seems to be for leaders in our society, the challenge is accessibility. Because they have many followers, like, thousands of disciples, for example, or, in their zone as GBC or secretary or whatever, they're not accessible, actually. So how can we extend that accessibility?
I don't know, in the corporate world, what we would have done is we would have ensured that they, as the CEO of the organization, they had empowered a few people in between. But of course, with your spiritual master, with your sannyasi, you want to have a direct relationship. It's not possible. It's just not possible. Some Guru Maharajs, they have 30,000 disciples, etc. How do you have a one-on-one relationship? Maybe at the soul level, I can't answer that. I'm more of a materialist. But it's very, very difficult. How do you ensure that at one level, the disciples continue to be inspired by the spiritual masters? It's very, very difficult. I'm one of those lucky ones who has got a little bit extra access to my spiritual master because he travels within the region.
I have a question in relation to this. I was thinking a simple answer to his question is just to have more gurus so that people can have direct relationships with their spiritual master. But then my question in relation to what you're speaking is that also something that they find useful or necessary within the corporate world, that when you have a mass number of people that you're trying to help, that you break it up or something, so that there's other very direct leaders that people are responsible to, or that you can have that more intimate relationship with.
Yeah, I know that in certain clusters in our organization, we have got that counselor system, etc. And it's their responsibility to also nurture and have a direct relationship, etc. I'm not sure whether it's working or what, but let's take it as a... Yes, Guru.
It seemed that...
Maharaj, please feel free to add into this.
It seemed that when people are satisfied, or as a leader, somebody takes a leadership position, fulfilling it properly, then this need of personal reciprocation is satisfied, and that you don't need to seek. I think in corporate world, same. If you're satisfied with your leader, you don't look to complain about him or look for other kind of higher rank relationship. And therefore we have system of shiksha guru. And that's the point, to become such person who is able to satisfy all the needs of
I think that's a very, very good point.
Well, my experience is that, this culture of artificial dependence on the leader for everything is not very useful. And, I see the only solution is in training people is how to become autonomous. Because, in terms of spiritual knowledge, they have program books, they have classes, but they have spiritual masters, but, it's not a good thing to, always expect guru or a leader to guide in every single day.
Just at the end of the morning presentation, you showed a slide that everyone can be a leader. And it was very reminiscent of Mahaprabhu's instruction that everybody become a guru. And as you're describing these things, these are the basic qualities of someone who is living devotional life and integrity, which naturally inspires others to want to follow it and knows Mahaprabhu's desires. Accepting that natural spread of responsibility, I think that's something our organization struggles with. Because there's incentives to keep the power in certain areas when actually it's meant to spread quite naturally.
So, when we have this effective relational leadership, it yields trust. So let's move on. Let's reflect. Think of a leader you have worked with or suffered from a lack of trust with the team. What went wrong and why? How will you coach him? There are times when followers can also coach their leaders. It's not necessary for the leaders to be coaching. I have got my own teammates who tell me, maybe you should have done it this way. As an authentic leader, as a vulnerable leader, you will say, yeah, that's a wonderful advice. You can't be 100% right.
We cannot be gods.
Correct?
We cannot become God.
Cannot become
God.
God, yeah. Okay? Can trust be repaired? If the trust has been lost, can it be repaired? Can you give an example? Or why do you feel, or why are you convinced that it can be repaired?
Because it's based on expectation and the ability of that person to meet the expectation. So when there's some trust lost in my experience, it's usually due to lack of communication about the expectation, not necessarily an intentional sabotage on the part of the person who would, in the leadership position, the trust has been lost. So once there's more clarity there about the expectations of each, then trust is automatically reestablished.
Excellent point. It's really about the communication. Because whenever there's a communication breakdown, that's when people will say, oh, I was thinking this is the way, this was my perception, etc. Very good point, Prabhuji.
I think that person who, with whom you have trust issues, in order to repair this trust, this person has to make an error if it's valuable. And that means person, first of all, admits mistake, acknowledges where the problem was, and excuses himself, shows that he is sorry, and asks, can I have another chance? So, you incline to give a chance. And then if this chance is taken properly, taken advantage of, then, trust can be repaired.
Yes, ma'am.
So, in terms of mediation, you explained that when trust, first someone has to become trustworthy themselves. So when I hear this relational leadership, somehow my reflection is, unless a person understands leadership from an intra perspective, it's difficult to develop this relational leadership because it starts from inside of ourselves. We have to be trustworthy in order to build trust with others.
So that was the earlier aspect of personal leadership. The intra leadership is more about a personal leadership aspect. That's what I'm understanding from your statement.
Yeah, well, I don't see that being separate. I'm not sure. I'm guessing.
There is an interconnect between personal leadership and relational leadership, and this two forms the pillar for inspirational leadership. When you have the personal leadership, when you are authentic, and when you are great with relational leadership, then you automatically inspire people. Let's move on. Okay. There's this concept in the corporate world that, if I've lost trust with my former leader, then automatically, it's hard for me to get back onto that level with the new leader coming on board. Okay? So that's not true. In reality, you can always repair trust, you repair relationships, you can rebuild the trust.
You're talking about you have trust issues as your personal problem, and then you project it to another person. That's what you're saying. So it's not that's what you're referring to?
No, I think it's not. I think it's the ecosystem of trust which is broken between two individuals. It's the ecosystem. It's not as a leader I've lost trust in my people. Possibly the other way around, where people have lost trust as well. The third foundational aspect of leadership is contextual leadership, okay? Where you form consensus between your team members, right? Create a sense of team identity, giving them meaning, right? Why this is so important for our growth. We should all be proud about the impact we are creating in society. Sense of belonging, and this is so important as a mission. That is contextual leadership. Right? So you focus and simplify the accomplishments of tasks at hand. As a leader, it's very important for you to orchestrate resources. Okay? To make things simple for your people. You can't just leave them at the deep end of the pool. You have to orchestrate resources for them. Right, that is the role of a leader. Ensure that there is coordination through clarity of roles and functions. Everybody knows what they have to do. You provide them with enabling tools, etc. This is really so important. I've personally seen that in our organization, sometimes it's not done. Okay, Prabhu, this is a project for you. You are empowered to do it. I mean, not everybody is a Guru Das and Chamasundar, not everybody is like that. But of course, Prabhupada was a different level as a leader too. So you create sense and coherence within the team. And as a leader, it's very important to connect back to the big picture. How this work is going to be helping the organization. Linking it back to the overall strategy, everybody has to feel that they are part of their strategy, of their social enterprise, they are part of the strategy of the corporate or of the not-for-profit. In fact, when you run your own enterprises one day, your social enterprises or your business or your partnerships with the government, etc., when you come up with your strategy at the topmost level, ensure that it is well communicated throughout the whole organization. Everybody knows what is the vision of the organization, what is the mission of the organization, how are you going to be achieving the mission. Okay? And then each subgroups will work towards how they add up to the overall big picture. That is so important. Even in the corporate world, we actually fail in that. We fail in that. And that's the reason why we have got siloed organizations. Siloed teams. Each team do not know what the other team is doing. There's no connection back to the big picture. So that's contextual leadership. And what does it yield? When a leader has formed the coherence within a team, it will create a community spirit within the organization. Question for us. Does our temple or the center you come from, does it exude a community feeling? Reflect on the 4 earlier characteristics of contextual leadership. Has there been a sense of team identity created? Has there been focus and simplification on the accomplishment of the task? Connection back to the big picture and the overall strategy. I think many of us may struggle with this. So now let's move on to inspirational leadership. As I mentioned earlier on, inspirational leadership draws from the foundation of personal leadership and relational leadership. So what is inspiration? It is creating a climate of excellence. Inspire people so that they give their best. Alright? Encourage innovation. Encourage people to do things differently. Not necessarily they have to follow the same way. There might be a shortcut to doing things. Okay? Raise enthusiasm and optimism. That's what inspiration is all about. And believe in your people. You know, Martin Luther King, he said that I believe that in the state of Alabama, the black boys and black girls will be holding their hands together with the white boys and white girls in the playground or something like that. He believed, he knew that this was a possibility. Okay, so as leaders, we have to see the possibilities in our people. So is inspirational leadership about charisma? Do you think it's about charisma? It's not about charisma. Frankly, it's not about charisma. It's not based on charisma or charm, but on the ability and the effectiveness of the leader in engendering greater aspirations and enthusiasm amongst those who follow. You don't need charisma for that. As long as you can tell them that this is how it connects back to the big picture and this is how it's helping you in helping the dream of the organization. It's about, yes?
As far as I know,
Not everybody has to be because the notion or the research has shown that leaders who are charismatic, it may last for a while, but their success is not really because of the charisma. And at the same time, there is research proving that many large organizations have done great. But then if you look at their leaders, they have been working from the back end. They have not been exuding all that charisma. From the back, they were empowering their people. See? Good to have, but not necessary. I will show you a short video later on where I can't remember the leadership expert, he explains this really well. Okay, so an inspiration, yes, Prabhu.
So I'm just trying to understand. Charisma, what you're talking here, is just kind of quality of a person.
Yes.
It's not his personal qualities, but his external kind of effulgence. It's not necessary. It just attracts other people, but it's not because of the beauty of his heart.
No. Okay. It's the external traits.
External effulgence.
From my observation, it seems that things in Asia work a bit differently than in the West. Because as you explained, I completely agree that some leaders, they don't have to be in the front, and trying to, how do you say, motivate their, whoever they are. They can, that's in Asia. But in the West, the charisma, it's big percentage of success. And we've seen it, it's historically proven actually. The charismatic leader in the West, it's very important.
But you see, many charismatic leaders have lacked that compassion also. When it comes to a crisis in the organization, when it comes to a crisis in a corporate organization, what do? The first thing they do is they don't bother about their salaries. The first thing they do is they cut people. Yesterday, Cornerstone, which is a large IT company in the HR world, they said that they're going to cut 80% of their people. But if he had been a leader who is full of compassion, would he have done that? Let's look at another leader, the CEO of the Marriott Group. He was not seen as a charismatic leader at all. The CEO of Marriott Group, during 9/11, Marriott is the world's largest hotel chain. Okay? They have occupancy of 85%. During 9/11, the occupancy went all the way down to 15%. He could have easily gone in and said, okay, for my shareholders' sake, I need to cut people. But he had that compassion. He said the worst case scenario would be, I will have to cut people. But right now, what I will do is, I preempt. In the worst case situation, if I have to cut people, let me start by empowering them with new skills first. Let me see what I could do. Maybe I should cut my bonus, I should cut my salary, or get people to look at how they can reduce their man hours. Being a compassionate leader, he saw all of this before he even decided to cut down on his staff levels. But he was never seen as a charismatic leader. Just one example. Yes,
we're going to be looking at the charismatic leadership tactics later.
Lastly.
I have a curious question.
Sure.
Since you're speaking about inspirational leadership, and you use that example of Martin Luther King, he was both inspirational and charismatic. So is it possible that there could be both?
Let's look at this inspirational leader. He's a simple conductor in the Boston Philharmonic band. Very simple. Right, but he has really emerged as a leadership guru. What has he done differently? Let's watch this video. It's about 10 minutes, but it's worth every minute.
He's a program at Walnut Hill, a high school for the performing arts in Boston. As a writer, he co-authored The Art of Possibility, Transforming Professional and Personal Life. He talked to head teachers at a conference organised by the National College of School Leadership.
I'm a teacher like you. I teach at the conservatory in Boston. I have a class on Friday afternoon. People come from all over the world and they're excited to be there and they're eager to learn, but what's really going on? They say, am I better than her? Am I better than him? I know I'm better than her. I don't think I'll ever be as good as him. I hope I can be as good as him. They're constantly comparing and they're measuring. And when they can't come out to play, let's say the violin, it looks as though there's one person playing the violin, right? There are two people. There's a person who's playing the violin, and then there's another person standing behind the person who's playing the violin, whispering in his ear, you haven't practiced enough. Do you know how many people play this piece better than you do? That difficult passage, you missed it the last time. It's coming right up. You're going to miss it again. That's the voice in the head. If anybody say, what does he mean, a voice in the head? What's he talking about, a voice in the head? That's the voice I mean. Took a moment for you to hear it, right? That voice keeps talking and talking and talking, and it never stops. Sometimes it talks so loudly that it drowns out the music. So my job is to get hold of that voice. And this is how it works. I do it each year. I come into my class at the beginning of the year, and there are about 40 students in my class, and I say, after a little bit of housekeeping, I say, your grade for the year is an A. You're an A, that's your grade. And there's one condition. The condition is that they have to write me a letter in the first 2 weeks of the class, of the year. The letter must be dated the following May, when the class ends. So the date at the top is May 2000 of the next year. And then the letter must begin with these words, Dear Mr. Zander, I got my A because... Then they have to write a letter describing who they will have become by the following May to justify this extraordinary grade. And I tell them to fall passionately in love with the person they're describing in the letter. And they do. They write about who they would be, who they could be, who they see themselves as. Only that damn voice would stop telling them they can't do it. When I come into class, the person I teach is the person that they have described in their letter. You see, I only take A students. Now, there are a few people looking very concerned and saying, how does he do that? Well, the answer is very simple. You can give an A to anybody. You can give an A to a waitress in a restaurant, to a taxi driver. You can give an A to the other drivers when you're driving in traffic. You can give an A to your mother-in-law. You can give an A to your boss. You can give an A to anybody. What happens when you give an A is that the relationship is transformed. This is hard for teachers. I know this is very, very hard. I addressed a group of teachers earlier this year, and one of them came up to me afterwards and said, I like this giving an A, it's sweet, he said. But he said, but it doesn't make, you don't know them. Students, you don't know them, you don't know their work. So I imagine as the year progresses, and you find out that some of them are quite mediocre, I imagine you modify the grade, right? I said, no, and then I tell them about this young girl I met. She's about 15, I said, what's your name? She said, Joy. I said, I beg your pardon. She said, Joy. Now, should her parents modify her name? No, because we don't give children a name as an expectation to live up to. We give children a name as a possibility to live into. The person who understood this perfectly was Michelangelo, and I'm sure you've heard this beautiful thing, but it bears repeating. Somebody asked Michelangelo about sculpting, and he said, oh, sculpting is easy because you have a piece of marble. Inside the piece of marble is a beautiful statue. All you need is a hammer and a chisel just to get rid of all the stone that's in the way. That's actually a theory of education. It's of course not the one we use. The one we use, we're up here, the students are down here, and they try to get up and they do their homework and they work hard and they study and they work as hard as they can, and this is as far as they get. This is the gap between their achievement and our standards. And of course they're very manipulative because they know what we want to hear, so they can get up a little higher. Michelangelo's model is totally different. It's eye to eye. We each have a hammer and a chisel and we're working to get rid of all that stone that's in the way of that beautiful statue. It's a totally different world. That came home to me very powerfully one day. This was the first year I did economics with the A, and I was really excited about it. I came into class, and I said to all the class were there, and I said, what does it feel like to get an A in the first class of the year? I mean, you haven't done anything, you get an A. What does that feel like? To my amazement, one of the Asian students put up his hand like that. Forgive me for my attempt at his accent. He said, in Taiwan, he said, I was number 68 out of 70 students. I come to boss, Mr. Zander says I'm an A. It's very confusing. I am number 68 out of 70. Mr. Zander says, I'm an A, but I am number 68. I worked 3 weeks, very confused. Then one day I discovered much happier A than number 68. I decided I'm an A. I call that cosmic laughter. That's not head teacher's laughter, that's cosmic laughter. Because what you're laughing at is the realization, of course, that the A is invented, the 68 is invented. We might as well invent something that lights up our life and the life of the people around us. I don't know if you know this, but about in America, in our music schools, we have about half our students from Asia. From China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore, and all these places. And they play fantastically well. They're great. They win the competitions, but they don't speak up in class. And I found out why. I actually asked them. I said, what is this about? And they explained to me. They said, Mr. Zander, you have to understand. In Asia, it's very important to be right. The teacher is always right. And the students try to be right. And as one of these young ladies said, the best way to be right is not to say anything, then you won't be wrong. Now, I believe the exact opposite, which is you cannot learn anything unless you make a mistake. So I tell my students, when you make a mistake, celebrate. And the way to celebrate is like this. How fascinating! It's actually quite difficult. Try it out on the golf course next time you're at it. You know why it's difficult? It's because when we make a mistake, we tend to pull down, the body pulls down. Notice the next time you make a mistake, the body pulls down. Now instead, when it pulls down, you go, how fascinating! It's like this, it's difficult to do. We had a conference of leaders of the music world, you know, heads of orchestras and schools and opera houses and so on. And we had a 3-day conference. And there was a lot of what I call downward spiral speaking. Now, I don't know what the head teacher's downward spirals are, but I'll tell you some of the musical downward spirals. The little old ladies who like classical music, they're all dying, so there's not going to be an audience. The children don't learn instruments anymore, all they do is watch MTV, so they're not going to grow up liking classical music. And the National Endowment of the Arts is not supporting, and the foundations aren't supporting the arts the way they used to, so we're going to run out of funds. By the end of the second day, people were walking around the corridor in the hotel like this. Because you know, everywhere there's downward spirals, you can't get around. I was looking at the Times this morning, and I thought of bringing it in and showing you how many columns in the Times are downward spirals. It's amazing. Every column is a downward spiral. Of course, the stock market, that's a downward spiral. Downward spiral. Also upward spiral. Upward spiral and downward spiral are actually the same thing. Because wherever you have a winner and a loser, you automatically have a downward spiral. So of course, sports is full of downward spiral, but it doesn't matter in sports because we all go out for a beer afterwards. But our educational system is based on a downward spiral because there's nowhere to go from an A but down. So we shouldn't be surprised if our kids look anxious. Sometimes it seems as though there's nothing but downward spiral, which of course isn't true, which is why I asked for another flip jump. Now over here, we have possibility, the world of possibility, the realm of possibility, and this is where the vision is. And vision is very important. Vision is really important. Because you know, people get confused about vision. They say, oh, some vision is to be number one, to be a no. That's a joke. Vision, to be a vision, has to be for everyone. Everyone. At this conference, somebody stood up in front of the whole group and said, 3% of the population likes classical music. If we could move it to 4%, our problem would be over. I say everybody loves classical music, they just haven't found out about it yet. How would you walk? How would you talk? How would you be if you thought 3% of the population likes classical music? How would you talk? How would you walk? How would you be if you thought everybody loves classical music? They just haven't found out about it. These two worlds are totally different worlds. I had an amazing discovery. This is a really big deal for me. I was 45. I'd been conducting for over 20 years, and suddenly one day I had this kind of road to Damascus event. Eureka! I realized the conductor of an orchestra doesn't make a sound. My picture appears on the front of the CD. But the conductor doesn't make a sound. He depends for his power on his ability to make other people powerful. And when that happened, it changed everything. People in my orchestra said, "What happened to you, Ben? What happened?" That was what happened. I realized my job was to awaken possibility in other people. Of course, I wanted to know whether I was doing that. And you know how you find out? You look at their eyes. If their eyes are shining, you know you're doing it. You could light up a village with this guy's eyes. If the eyes are shining, you know you're doing it. If the eyes are not shining, you get to ask a question. Who am I being that my player's eyes are not shining? You can do that with our children too. Who am I being that my children's eyes are not shining? Now over here, we have goals. Have you noticed how goals tend to be rather grim? We have a goal. It's a rather grim pursuit. We have to make the goal. Now over here, you can have a goal as part of the vision. By all means, you have a goal, and if you make the goal, great, and if you don't, how fascinating! Because you know, we all know why we have goals. Why do we have goals? To make our eyes shine, that's all. That's the reason we have a goal. So if the goal posts are too close together, you can't score. If they're too far apart, it's too easy. So if it's not working, the eyes aren't shining, move the goalpost. That's the thing. Now, over here you have the words, you should, you ought, you need, and you must. Try those on your children and see if their eyes shine. Over here we have things like, how about, what if, what are we looking for? What's next? Over here you see totally different language, totally different. Now over here you have blame and fault and threat. And over here, request and apologies. Totally different. This is where we put people down and also put people up. Over here, everybody gets an A. It's a totally different world. Now the leader, the new leader, is the one who first of all can distinguish the downwards power and then has the power to take people from there over here to radiating possibility. And anybody can do it. Anybody, an 8-year-old child can do it. Anybody can do it. There's a key. There's a key to the kingdom of possibility. I'm going to give you the key to the kingdom of possibility right now. Okay, so this is the story. It always comes in a story. Okay, the story is this. 2 prime ministers were sitting in a room and they had a conversation about the affairs of state, you know, the way prime ministers do. And suddenly the door bursts open and a man comes in a state of apoplectic upset. He's just like this and is making so much noise and racket and carries on because they stopped their conversation. And the resident prime minister says, "Peter, please remember rule number 6. Immediately, Peter's restored to complete calm. He bows, he apologizes, and he walks out of the room. They go back to their conversation. 20 minutes later, the door bursts open again. A woman comes in. She's hysterical, and her hair's flying, and mascara's running. Everything's a mess. And shouting again and again. The prime minister says, "Maria, please remember rule number 6. Immediately, she bows, she apologizes, she walks out of the room. And then 20 minutes later, it happens for the third time. The third time, the visiting prime minister says, "My dear colleague," he says, "this is astonishing." He said, "I don't believe it. 3 people have come into this room out of control. And you just say rule number 6. Would you be willing to share what this rule number 6 is?" He said, "Oh, this rule number 6 is very simple. Don't take yourself so goddamn seriously." He says, "Oh, that's a wonderful rule. What may I ask of the other rules?" There aren't any. Cosmic laughter. Pretty tentative, I must say. Now it comes down to 3 things. 3 things. 1, it's all invented. Got to get that. It's all invented. 2, standing in possibility. And 3, rule number 6. That's it. It's simple.
He's got lots of other videos on YouTube.
What's his name?
Alexander Zender. Benjamin Zender. Z-A-N-D-E-R, Benjamin Zender. So effective inspirational leadership, it yields high aspiration. So let's move on. Supportive leadership. Supportive leadership stands on the foundation of relational leadership and contextual leadership. Yes.
I just want to reflect on
video.
Yeah, because especially this downward spiral thing, I find that often when we come together, we tend to just rant about the problems, They don't do things right, they, how we should change, how we should improve. And I always find, lately, especially, I find it very unproductive. So how to do, what should one do? When the people see the problem, right, and they, with the good intentions, they want to make a better situation, how to avoid this downward spiraling?
I think it starts with positivity. Starting with positivity, looking at the possibilities, and also being authentic as to what could have been done differently. What could have been done differently to achieve a better state than what it is today. I think this blame game, as you rightfully pointed out, it just drags the energy down. And that's what Benjamin Zender said. If you look at the possibilities, I think it hypes up the energy in everybody. So I think whenever there's a situation which calls for us to do a post-mortem or a brainstorm on something which hasn't gone well, I think it's good to start with, what was the vision initially? What were we aiming to, or what were we hoping to achieve initially? Okay? Where we are today, what can be done to bridge the gap? And then, once you have done this positive discussion, and then you can look at what could have been done differently by different team members. That's how we have been taught. So supportive leadership is about providing awareness of pressing issues, providing the support ecosystem, orchestrating resources once again, but very important is to protect the team, providing them a safe haven to practice what they are doing. Provide the trust and the assurance that in case something goes on, don't worry, I am here. Coming back to our level 5, if something goes wrong, the CEO will not just push the blame. He says that, look, I'm overall responsible. Okay? This is something which has gone wrong, I take responsibility for it. But if something goes well, he gives the credit to his people. Okay? So, but then not to forget, you still need to promote accountability. Okay, but avoid the blame. Everybody has to be accountable. If there are targets set, everybody has to be accountable. But then, instead of blaming, look at what can be done differently. Another very short video, which is very powerful, I think it's quite inspiring. Allow me to play this. It's by a devotee.
Convinced that there's no such thing as an overnight success. I believe it's a fallacy, a myth to believe that overnight, 24 hours, that something can turn into a worldwide phenomenon. And once a lady was in the marketplace and she saw Picasso. And she went up to Picasso and she said, Picasso, can you draw me a portrait? He said, sure, I'll draw you a portrait. He reached for a pen and paper and he, in 30 seconds, sketched an identical portrait of this lady, and handing it back to her, he said, that'll cost you $30,000. And she replied, she said, Picasso, how can you charge me $30,000? That took you 30 seconds. He said, it took me 30 years to do that in 30 seconds. And it's amazing how that time, that unforgotten, that invisible world beyond the bottom of the iceberg, underneath the water, the part you don't see, is actually what made what you see today possible. When you look at the definition of failure in the English dictionary, it's defined by 3 words: lack of success. It means we don't value learning. It means we don't value growth. It means we don't value experience and struggle. Our obsession with winning means that we're actually letting go of all of that which we could be learning at every single point. Since I was a young boy, I've been enamored with stories of failure, from biographies and autobiographies and books about people who changed the world and books about people who changed other people in the world. There was a young cartoonist, and all the editors and newspaper journalists said that he lacked natural talent. They rejected him, and after countless rejections, there was actually a church minister who gave him an opening to start drawing little cartoons in the back of the church in this small little shed. And this gentleman, he once saw a mouse running around, and believe it or not, that was the birth of Mickey Mouse. That was Walt Disney, that cartoonist who went on to win 22 Academy Awards. There was a young man who was actually cut from his high school basketball team. He went home, he shut the door, slammed it shut, and actually cried for the rest of the evening. And funnily enough, he went on to become a 6-time NBA champion, a 5-time MVP player in the NBA. He's no other than the person called Michael Jordan. You believe it, that the person who's revered as one of the best players of all time was missed. That coach missed him, they missed his potential, and I'd love to speak to that coach now and see what they think of that.
The Chicago Bulls picked Michael Jordan of the University of North Carolina.
Imagine this lady was told that she wasn't fit for television. She was told that she would never make it online or on TV. And then Oprah Winfrey, she became the most influential woman in the world. This has to be my favorite story of all time. I mean, his fiance died, he failed in business, he had a nervous breakdown, and on all of that, he failed and lost in 8 elections. He went on to be the 16th president of the United States of America, and Abraham Lincoln. I actually believe that failure has the ability to lure success. Countless failures are almost doorkeepers to success, and every time you walk through one door, the gate gets bigger and the lock gets tighter, and it gets that much more difficult because we're being tested for our genuineness and our authenticity and our real desire to chase that goal, our real desire to actually embody the values that are needed to almost take responsibility for that success, to take responsibility for that position and the influence it brings with it. And therefore, if you've never failed, you've never really tried anything new.
Okay.
I really want you to get involved in this conversation.
Actually, in Singapore, we grew up with the notion that there's no space for failure. There's just no room for failure. But in the past 4 or 5 years, the government itself has been pushing everyone, every leader to start thinking that if somebody fails, let him fail fast. Fail fast and get out of it. And learn from that failure. So there has been a big paradigm shift. In the way things are being done in Asia. Because if you look at entrepreneurs, 80% of entrepreneurs will fail. 80%. But it's the resilience which is required in these people. They may fail in the first venture. They may fail in the second venture. Finally, the Lord has to open the door for them. See? So, it's just a big time mindset shift in Asia right now. Okay? So when you have supportive leadership, it yields initiative on the part of the people. They know that I will be supported. Let me come up with these initiatives. If there is a safe haven protecting them, if there is a blame game, then what is going to happen is let me do the minimal. Let me do the minimal, let me not take any risk, because at the end of the day, I will be on the hot seat. Yes, Prabhu.
I notice another, he speaks about the failures, but I notice that in every story, there are the kind of villains, so to say. People get rejected, they get lack of facilitation, and I think that we should, at least for ourselves, understand that sometimes Lord arranges a situation for us to become stronger and help others, because again, we get the blame game, or our leadership does not understand, they block us and this and that, but in reality, the story of failure is always of somebody who is blocking. At least in all these examples, he's not speaking about this explicitly, but in each failure there was somebody who was basically blocking the way, discouraging, not believing. The person would stand up and do it again.
Wonderful realization. Okay, so the last pillar, which is the responsible leadership or the ethical part. So basically, as a leader, if you have got all the other 5 domains as your support, then what's going to happen is you're going to be a steward of the firm. Okay? You are inspiring, you have provided the support for your people, you have got personal leadership, you have got relational leadership, and you have got coherence in the company, coherence in the team, and then ethical leadership is by default going to be there for you. Okay? So, what you are doing is you are fostering feelings of responsibility to others, not only inside the firm, but also outside. Okay? That's what ethical or responsible leadership is all about. You know, how can we ensure that the environment is protected? How can we ensure that the other stakeholders we are working with are protected? Okay? The rest of it you can read. Let's just move on. So effectively, ethical leadership will foster stewardship. And it separates leaders who are true great versus those who are good leaders. Okay. So when you have personal leadership, you have credibility, it yields credibility. When you have relational leadership, it yields trust. With contextual leadership, it yields community spirit. With inspirational, high aspiration, supportive, initiative, and finally, stewardship with responsible leadership. Okay, so that's the 6 domains. When you have time today in the evening, you can go back and reflect on where do you feel you stand for each of these 6 domains. When you have the time. Right? I do not have the time today to do this because I want to finish the Taj case discussion. And then we spoke about authentic leadership. Please read those 2 articles and do the exercise on demonstrating authentic leadership. It would have taken me 45 minutes in the class to do this. I think it's not the best use of the time. Yes, Manoj?
What is this stewardship?
Stewardship?
Yes.
You are the steward of the organization. Okay, you care not only for what is happening in the organization, but also in the periphery. Okay, so we have covered transformational leadership. We have covered the 6 domains. We spoke about authentic. We also spoke about level 5 leadership. So what is level 5 leadership? Wonderful video which also speaks a little bit about charisma.
Good morning, Believe Nation. Today's message is
leadership is not personality. Over you, Jim Collins.
I wake up every morning and espresso keep me going.
the one thing that we have to be very clear on is that leadership is not personality. Some leaders do have charisma, but a lot of the very best leaders that we studied in the course of history had what I might call a charisma bypass. And they are not people who would jump across a table at you. Some of them can be almost strange in their behavior. Some of them can be magnetic in their behavior. Some of them can be harsh and abrasive in their behaviors. And when you look at all that, you say, well, wait a minute, leadership is not personality. And in fact, if you're highly charismatic, that's not necessarily a positive. Because the critical thing we found about how people engage with a leader is not about this external stuff. That's really pretty irrelevant. It has to do with an answer to a simple question. Why are you in it? Are you fundamentally doing something that's about you? Or are you trying to build something great, to accomplish something great, to build great products, or whether to build a great company, or to change a bunch of kids' lives in a school, or to accomplish a mission in Afghanistan? I mean, if it's fundamentally about you as a leader, why should anybody give themselves over to what you're trying to do? But if it's fundamentally that you're channeling your ego into a cause or a company or a set of work or something that you're trying to accomplish that is not about you, that's when people will sign up. So what do you think?
I think there's a lot of truth in what he said in his message. You know, at first when I was watching the clip, I was like, what's this guy talking about? Of course, you know, there are natural-born leaders. Of course, being a strong, value-based leader is something that you're born with. It's personality-based, and I totally disagree with him. Until like halfway through the clip, and then I was like, I get what this guy's saying. And then by the end I was like, yeah, it has nothing to do with personality. Because if you have a set of values, if you have a goal, if you live outwardly, if your mission is bigger than you, then of course you'll get people to follow. If you're someone who doesn't like to speak, if you're an introvert, if you are an extrovert, if no matter what your personality is, if you're trying to do something bigger than you, people will follow. They'll get on board.
I think entrepreneurs, we tend to look at super successful entrepreneurs who are in the media and feel like I need to be like them to be successful. You may look at Steve Jobs and say, well, he's so charismatic, or look at Oprah and she's so charismatic, and feel like, oh, I'm an introvert, I'm not charismatic, I can't be successful like them, or I need to be like them and I need to force myself to be someone I'm not to have success. Where if you look at the billionaires, right? If you take out all the people who've inherited wealth and the ones who've just become wealth because of entrepreneurship, a lot of them you couldn't name. Like a lot of them would not be recognizable names to you because there's a lot of different ways to build a business. And the ones that stand out are the ones who are using their voice because they're really good at it, right? You know Oprah because she's using her strength, her voice, to be a leader. But there's a lot of people we've never heard of who use their introverted leadership skills to be successful as well. And so, for me, the key message is you want to be yourself, right? I mean, you're building a business to do something that you want to be proud of. You're building it for your community and not just for your own ego, but to go all in on your strengths. And if you are an outgoing, extroverted person, then be that. But if you're introverted and analytical and detail-oriented, then go all in on that and don't try to be someone who you're not, because if you try to do that, you won't have success.
One thing I'd just quickly add is when we look at other people, we're seeing the veneer, we're seeing the outside, we're seeing what they put into the world. We don't see their heart, we don't see their mind, we don't see their fears or challenges. So when you're living you, when you're being yourself, you're putting yourself out there, it's best not to compare yourself against all those people who seem so good at things, but we're not in their mind, we don't really understand what they're working through day to day.
Okay, so the video speaks about authentic leadership, speaks about personality and charisma not being the most important parameters in leadership. Okay? It's a different paradigm shift from what we have been thinking all this while. Actually, it's different. Charisma helps. Okay? If you are even outwardly a leader, inwardly a leader, I mean. Okay, it helps, but it's not the most important. So Jim Collins, he speaks about, the most important, what's that, Jim Collins, one of the prabhus will be doing the course of Jim Collins, right? The most effective skills. Okay, anyway, there's going to be a course, one of the prabhus is facilitating, I think he's the coach. Yeah, the older prabhu is going to be doing that part. But Jim Collins also speaks about this level 5 leaders. Earlier on during the facilitation, one of you asked about, the increasing leadership strengths as you progress from a level 1 to level 5. But level 5 leaders are very different from the rest of the leaders. What is the difference? Number one is the humility. The humility which they exude. Okay? They develop the humility whenever they are in a problematic stage, they ask for help. They are vulnerable. Okay? They take responsibility and they also develop discipline. They find the right people, but when something goes well, what do? They give the praises to their team. Something goes wrong, they take ownership for it. That's a level 5 leader. Okay? Wonderful article in HBR I'll be sharing with you. In the interest of time, what we will do is we'll move on to the last framework we will cover on leadership. But before that, there are two sides of level 5 leadership. The professional will side of it and the personal humility side of it. Okay? Being humble. Let's look at the personal humility side of it. Okay? He demonstrates a compelling modesty. He's never boastful. Even if he's the highest CEO in the organization, he can be the group CEO. He's never boastful, extremely humble. Okay? He acts quiet with a calm determination. He relies principally on inspired standards to motivate. And then he channels the ambition into the company, not into himself. He sets up successes for even greater success at the next generation. He empowers his leaders. He ensures that there is enough pipeline of leaders in the organization. And finally, he looks out of the window to apportion credit for the success of the company to others. And he also says, yeah, it's just good luck. We have been successful because it's good luck, it's because of my people. He doesn't say it's because of me. Let's now reflect on the professional will aspect of this. He creates superb results, great leader, okay, great to transition, good to great, unwavering resolve to do the best long-term results. He has the will for that. He sets the standard of building an enduring company, and you will settle for nothing less. So this guy is not a lazy bum. Huh? He has got all the vision, he's putting all his efforts, but the main important differentiation is the humility aspect of it. Any questions? Yes, Maharaj.
So Prabhupada gave very interesting definition of humility, which is to be bold for Krishna.
To be
bold.
To be bold for
Krishna. So how? Because oftentimes humility is understood as kind of low self-esteem or things like that, but how the humility combines with determination and courage and other qualities.
Okay, I think if you look at determination, if you look at courage, etc., those are those very masculine characters which we expect in a leader, but the latest research, I'm now speaking from the research point of view, the latest research says that leaders have to be mindful. They have to have the empathy and the compassion. So, based on research, based on analytics of the behaviors of the CEO, this is like progressively evolving from what we have always been thinking. So, yeah, I've prepared my slides based on the research perspective of things. As for Prabhupada's point of view on humility being bold for Krishna. Yes, Prabhuji. I do not know how it connects over here.
I think there's no contradiction at all. Actually, humility is when you never take credit for anything yourself. It's Krishna's mercy. It's devotee's mercy, Guru Maharaj's mercy. That's the only definition of humility. You can be as bold and strong as you want. Srila Prabhupada was very bold. He was extremely humble. Same with his ancestors. He was lion guru, but he was personification of humility because he was never coming out of false ego. Because I'm doing this. He knew I'm doing this for Krishna, and even the ability to do it for Krishna is my Guru Maharaj's mercy, Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So this is a humility.
I'm just reflecting on a point which continues from where you said. In fact, Krishna says very clearly in Bhagavad Gita that do your duty, but do not be attached to your results. Number one. And at the same time, he says, but do not abstain from doing your duty. So there are times when I
never consider yourself to be the result, the cause of your activities.
There are times when I'm working on large deals for the business group. Okay? But due to competition, due to some crazy reasons, we do not get that deal. And my bosses are like shocked. Why is it that Praveen is calm? Why is it that he's not disturbed? All of us are like so disturbed, but he was the one who submitted the tender, he was the one who signed on the documents, etc. But why? Then I explained to them about the values which we have been taught from the Bhagavad Gita. And now they are inspired to write an article in Harvard Business Review on the Bhagavad Gita's perspective of results. I'm wanting to collaborate with Chaitanya Charan Prabhu on this one. Okay, so mindset shifts are happening in a big way, essentially. Okay, so finally, okay, then I'll move on to the Taj case. The final framework I want to share with you is the 6 leadership styles. Prabhuji, we discussed that earlier on during lunch. Okay, so essentially, what the 6 leadership style tells us is, just imagine a golfer going into the golf course. Of course, Prabhupada never advised anyone to play golf, but it's a wonderful analogy. Right? What does he do? When he wants to go for a long shot, he will use the wood. When he wants to go for a nearer shot, nearer the putt, etc., he takes a different golf stick. Okay? So that's exactly the role of a leader. He cannot have just one style of dealing with people. He needs to be able to adapt fast. He needs to be able to switch fast from one style to another. Is it going to be easy?
No.
No. It takes lots of practice. But what are the 6 essential styles?
The first style that is basically described by Dan Goldman is coercive. And it's fundamentally negative because the coercive style of leadership is the command and control. It's the bully type. Again, you do not need to bully people or use command and control. If you are effective in being able to communicate, your sense of trust and authenticity will not really demand that you force people what to do. And the question often comes up, will this threat work? Well, the answer is yes. Threat will work, but only on a temporary basis. You have to keep upping that threat. So let's eliminate the coercive style of leadership from the get-go. That if you are coercive, put it in the closet. Don't use it. The second and most important leadership style is what Dan calls the authoritative style or the visionary style. It's not authoritarian, but it's being able to stand there as a leader and inspire trust. Secure-based leaders who are able to create this visionary, authoritative approach lead people because they want to be followed. People who see the leader as competent and someone who cares about them, they will follow them. And so you can give orders, you can give directives from this style because of the bond that exists. This is the problem with coercive. It is coercive because it lacks bonding. And even the military, which is for many people counterintuitive, trains in authoritative, not authoritarian, visionary style of leadership in which you want those soldiers who you may have to order into battle to be there with you, to trust you, to follow you because they want to follow you. You don't have to coerce them. You are to team with a leader who is using that visionary and authoritative style. That's the strongest and most positive style. Then you have the affiliative style. This is the leader who focuses on getting people to like them. Now, it's good when people like you, but if you are, let's say, addicted or obsessed with people liking you, you're going to easily be a hostage when they are sensitive to criticism or when they feel rejected. And so you have to not be overly concerned about people liking you. The affiliative style is good, but it has its limits because you have to dare people, you have to give tough feedback, and you have to rely on that authoritative, visionary style if you are too affiliative. So let's put affiliative in the box of positive, but with certain limits. And then comes the democratic style. This is also very good, in which you seek consensus. You want to get everybody participating. Now, in the modern world, it sometimes takes too long to get everybody engaged in their opinion. So teams or leaders who are trustable and teams that trust each other allow for people to make decisions and not everybody has to be consulted. In teams that are insecure, some people feel rejected when they're not consulted. But if your leader is trustable, you allow them to make decisions and you go along with them. So the democratic style, again, let's put in the positive category, but it has limits, and especially around getting things to move faster. What we find in organizations that are too bureaucratic, everybody wants to be involved in that decision. That's just not a good idea. How do you streamline the culture to make decisions on a speedier, simplistic way? And then comes the pace-setting style, which is fundamentally negative. Dan describes the fundamental pace-setter as negative because the pace-setter, from that negative perspective, is giving too long of stretch goals without empathy and compassion. So there's a second type of pace-setter. It's the pace-setter who has enough compassion, enough empathy, enough caring, that people feel you are with them. So stretch goals, being a pace setter from a positive perspective, is strong.
Okay. So essentially it can be summarized in this schematic representation over here. Coercive leaders, they demand immediate compliance. I want you to do this. Alright? I know of some ISKCON leaders who have been like this in the earlier years. Alright? It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The style in a phrase is as follows: do as I tell you, do what I tell you. Okay? What is the emotional intelligence competencies? Drive to achieve initiative and self-control. Okay? And when does the style works? It actually works, but only during a crisis. It doesn't work always. When something is really wrong, you need to repair the stuff, that's when you use the coercive style. Okay? In a crisis, to kickstart a turnaround or with problem employees. And what's the overall impact on the climate? It's negative. Authoritative, not authoritarian. When I studied in university, we had to go through a HR course. Authoritarian was like seen as bad. But in this framework, authoritative is more visionary. So what happens? You are mobilizing people towards a vision. You know, it's like having a chain and pulling all your followers towards a vision. Okay? And what's the style in a phrase? Come with me. Come on this journey with me. Okay? And what's the emotional competencies? You have got self-confidence. You care for people, and you are a change catalyst. Right? And when does the style work best? When change requires a new vision, or when there's a clear direction needed. What's the overall impact? It is the most strongly positive. This is the best style to have actually. This is the best style to have. And then you have the affiliative. You know, forming nice relationships with your team members, etc. People come first. That's the style. Oh, my people are most important to me. Right? You build the empathy, you build relationships, and you have got excellent communications. Right? And it's a positive style. It helps to motivate people. If there are some discords in the organization, it helps to heal that. Research with more than 500 CEOs have actually shown that the best styles is a combination of authoritative and affiliative. If these two comes together, excellent. You have a vision, you can bring people towards your vision, you are great with relationships, etc. But when it comes to a problematic situation, when it comes to a crisis, this style is the best. Democratic is great, you're asking everybody for consensus, etc. But then it takes too much of time. It just takes too much of time. And what about pace setting? Pace setting would be a workaholic manager. He's full of energy, he works from 9 to 12 at night. Too much of energy, people are not able to keep up with. And that's negative. Okay? People will lose trust with the managers. Hey, I can't achieve what he's asking for. And then finally the coaching. Right? Coaching is great. When things don't go right, you explain to people, etc. That's good. So always remember, focus on this too. Okay? But everything has its place. So now let's look at it a little bit more detailed. You have got the 6 styles and you have got correlations. You have got correlations over here. Okay? So the overall impact on the working environment is the highest for authoritative. Because you are visionary, being able to pull people towards the vision. Okay? Then comes affiliate, then comes democratic, and then comes coaching. Pace setting is negative because people lose trust. You are like over there and your employees are over here. Okay? They can't keep up with your pace. Coercive is also bad, equally bad, like pace setting. Okay? Now let's look at the various parameters. Right? If you look at rewards, there is a positive correlation, okay, between rewards and authoritative style. Positive. Okay. Negative with coercive, etc. Okay. Take your time to look through this. Right? In the interest of time, it's there. The slides will be there with you. Just have a look at this. But I think, you know, as leaders, all of us should try to see how we could bring the right leadership styles in our leading our teams. Okay. So, this to be used at the right time. Remember the 6, each of them to be used at the right time, at the right measure. Okay. And then you can switch flexibly based on the demand of that particular situation. Can be learned. As you do more and more, you will get a gist of it. Yes, Prabhu?
It seems somebody is studying and dissecting those things, but normally effective leaders are quite natural.
Yes.
I mean, they just
seamlessly.
And they don't think about it. They don't think how I switch gears. They know, and they get this intelligence, I guess.
As time goes by, when you do more and more, you will get a hang of it. Because you will go back to my earlier experiences. You will keep on reflecting, hey, at that situation, I tried this style. I'm reflecting on my experiences and actually it worked. When I tried this style at a particular situation, it didn't work for me. You know, so subconsciously you will keep on reflecting also, and then it just gets into a habit of seamlessly executing on this. You have to do it sufficient number of times, then you will get it. Right? So once again, the most potent combination is authoritative and affiliative. Alright, any questions before I move on to the last part of today's program? So we have covered the leadership side of things. Now let's look at customer centricity. Let's look at customer centricity. I know in our organization, in ISKCON, there's no such concept as customer. Who is our customer? We are not a for-profit organization. Okay? But what do you do with a customer? In a corporation, what do you do with a customer? You are fulfilling the needs of a customer. Yes, Maharaj.
ISKCON is also a corporation. It's incorporated.
Yes.
In New York in 66.
Okay, yes. Yeah, but it's not the for-profit kind of corporation. Yeah.
Our customer is conditioned souls. We sell it to
Exactly.
Namahata.
Yes.
Namahata. We sell it for the name, for the price of name.
Yes.
It's an interesting thing that Jesus said the same. I will make you, he's got his followers, so he said, yeah, customers are conditioned souls. We're going to drag them from the ocean of material existence.
Excellent. So congregational members, devotees, they are all our customers. So I start off by looking at describe your customer types. Identify your primary customer, conditioned souls. Understand your customer needs. And finally, develop customer focus. What can we do to develop our congregation? What can we do to develop our people, our leaders? Okay, so this is the theme of customer centricity. Of course, I'm using the corporate lens, and I'll try to see how this can be brought back to a not-for-profit religious organization like ours. Is that fine? Okay, let's watch a short video. Let's watch a short video. What is customer centricity? It's very inspiring. It's by Professor Ranjay Gulati.
So one of the central themes in this book is about talking about how companies need to put customers at the center of their business. And at one level, this is almost like a cliche or a platitude, because no company will tell you today that I don't want to be customer-centric, or what I call inside out versus outside in. And in that regard, I think I've tried very hard to clarify in this book, what exactly does it mean? I think is being customer-centric or outside in is really about a mindset shift. It's about really redefining how you define who you are. So I think most companies define themselves around their purpose, around I produce X product or service, and my job is to go out and make sure I sell it. As opposed to saying, my definition of who I am is I want to own this problem space. I want to solve these problems for these customers, and then my job is to figure out how can I best do those. So my identification is more with a set of customers and a set of issues they're dealing with, as opposed to with, here is my product or my service, or this is what I produce. And I think that kind of shift is where this all starts. That is, of course, facilitated if you start with a position of curiosity and humility, where you're curious to know who are my customers, what is really going on in their lives, and asking questions that are beyond narrow product-centric questions. Many companies are going to claim to be customer-centric, but when I say, well, what makes you customer-centric? And they say, well, I ask my customers, do you like my product? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? How can I make it better for you? And I said, that's not customer-centric. That's looking at the customer through the lens of your product. And one of the examples I use in the book is bag salad. Companies never would get to bag salad if they ask questions like, do you like my lettuce? And there are other companies I've looked at, for instance, like Target. For Target, the realization was that we have to be thinking very clearly about what's happening in the life of my customers. So if we look at Target in the present recession and how they've actually tackled it, one of the realizations was that customers distinguish between needs and wants. And when economic times are tougher, customers focus on needs more than wants. And in that context, they said, where do we need to shift our focus to needs more than wants? And that's where you saw a shift towards offering food in the store, much more focus on grocery and food, drives traffic into the store. So you start to see companies like Target that become much more attuned with who their customers are and what they want to do and what their objectives are in trying to do that. In the book, I've documented 4 levels of customer centricity. And I think I try to work the reader through what these levels are. That you start at level 1, which is what I call inside out, where you're thinking inside and then working out. And I end up with what I would call outside in, where you're starting out and then working your way back inwards. In the end, my hope is that when you reach that 4th level, you become agnostic to what you produce and don't produce. One of the examples, for instance, I've used is a company in India. It's the largest mobile operator in India called Bharti Airtel. And Bharti is really interesting because several years ago, they first decided to outsource their IT systems. They said, we don't want to run IT ourselves, IBM, you come run it for us. At the same time, they also decided they don't want to maintain and manage their cell towers. So they got a consortium of companies to manage the cell towers for them. A couple of years ago, more recently, what they've done is they said, we don't want to own our cell towers. Let's make a joint venture with 2 of our competitors and let that company own all the cell towers. So now you have a mobile operator that does not own its own cell towers, does not maintain its cell towers, does not manage its own IT systems, and you say, what do they do? Right? So they have defined their business very much around this idea that I want to own a problem space and a customer, and I'll let somebody else take care of how that actually gets done. So of course I have to gatekeep that, and I'm responsible.
So as I look at companies that are trying to become customer-centric, it's really about aligning yourself in a fundamental way around a set of customer problems, around a set of customers, and trying to, in a substantial way, address those issues.
Okay, so it's not about what we can offer them, it's about what they require. What is the problem statements, the condition souls have. So now what we will do is we'll take a 5-minute break, right, a washroom break, while I set up the IT for the case discussion. Very good. So what is your reflection from that, Madhuri?
Well, I'm still reflecting on what you just finished, and I'll do them both together.
Okay.
I was appreciating that you're a devotee, offering these tenets of leadership, that you're in the world, and I was realizing that there are some devotees in ISKCON that actually are offering this knowledge and are very knowledgeable about some of the tenets that you're sharing. However, I was thinking, it's my thoughts, that possibly because it's for a kind of like an elite kind of group, it's not getting into the masses. And I was kind of like having a feeling of discontent with that, because I was realizing that you're coming from the world in one sense, and you're presenting in the organization. There are people in the organization, but they're not getting to the people that really matter. So I was just reflecting on that, thinking, it's nice what Maharaj is doing. It's really nice that he's trying to connect people that really have this desire, you know, to learn, but they're not part of that elite group that ain't there. That was that. Parable of the Sat group, I think a little bit like that, somewhat. We tend to sometimes see a bigger picture, but we don't see, like my spiritual master used to say, you sometimes see the many and you forget the one. So I think that kind of sums it up for me with that parable.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody else like to share? What were some of their realizations when they read this article? If you have not read, no problems, because it's an optional reading for tomorrow also. Okay, this article is about ethical dilemma. Should I do this or should I not do this? Okay, so what has happened is there was this expedition walking up to the Everest, climbing the Everest, and finally one person actually sees a sadhu. You know, he's maybe just clad with a loincloth, he was like shivering. High up, close to the Everest. And what did they do? They carried him down, not to the base camp, closer to the base camp. They let him recover, and then they said, look, we have to now progress. We have to walk up to the peak of the Everest. We do not have time for you. Alright? We have already kept you here. Somebody else will look after you. So when they came back, they're not even sure whether was this guy well taken care of? Did he survive? Did he die? What happened to him? And until today, it is still bugging the author. Should we have spent more time taking him down, ensuring that, you know, he is well thawed, you know, well recovered from it? Or did we do the right thing by just looking at our own self-interest? Our own self-interest was to walk up, to scale Mount Everest, to get an accomplishment. So that's what the article is all about. So the reason why I requested you to read this is because it's very connected to the Taj Mahal terror case. You have on the 26th of November 2008, 10 terrorists from Pakistan. They arrived at the shore of Bombay. They arrived at the shore of Bombay and they went massive killing. Right? They went into the Taj Hotel, they went into the Oberoi Hotel, they went into the Victoria Terminus, they went to the Jewish, not Jewish community, was it the Jewish community? Community home. They just created havoc. Right? So this case is about the Taj Hotel. You have got employees. You had 600 employees in the hotel at that point in time. 600 employees. Sorry, there were 500 employees, 600 hotel room guests, and there were also another 600 people who were in the restaurants or having a function in the ballroom, etc. Okay? And many of the employees in the Taj Hotel were young guys with lots of aspirations. Lots of aspiration, young guys. Now the question comes, are they going to be sacrificing their lives for their guests? Or should they be the first to run out of the hotel? It's an ethical dilemma. Exactly like this. Should we have stayed on and brought that poor sadhu, looked after him for 2 more days, and then progressed on the expedition? Maybe the weather conditions were not right, we could not have finished our expedition. So that's the case, the Taj case. Can I have a show of hands as to how many of you, or what do you feel about the number of Taj employees who would have stayed in the hotel and helped? These are all young people with lots of aspirations. Okay? Many of them are family people too. They have got their kids, etc. Yes, sir.
Well, there is a spirit of Kshatriya who able to risk their life to protect their subjects, their dharma. Pretty sure the employees of hotel might not have all been Kshatriyas. And the goals also to risk their life for such a petty goal, it would be stupid. It would be a nice moral thing, but we understand it, and if people are intelligent, they have family to take care of, and I don't know, if it would be something connected with the Lord, with their aspiration to serve the Lord, something worthwhile to die for. To die for some guy who just enjoying their senses in their hotel.
Okay, wonderful devotee perspective. Anybody else? Out of that 500 employees, how many would have left and ran for their lives? How many would have remained? Yes, sir.
I think being an employee of the hotel does not qualify you to protect anybody. In fact, as suppose if you had the people who it is their profession, to protect, then
the security folks. So how many, out of that 500 to 600 employees, how many do you feel would have remained in the hotel?
Yes.
I heard many of them were just trapped in the hotel, they couldn't escape.
But there were times when they could have escaped. There were times when they could have escaped.
I think from what I heard, majority of them stayed back. And that's because of the culture inculcated by the hotel to serve the customers.
Okay, let's watch the video. And then the answer will be revealed.
Shook the world. 2611 certainly shook India, and certainly shook Bombay and Bombay citizens in a very big way.
The city was called Bombay for much of its history, renamed Mumbai in 1996. There were nearly 14 million people living in Mumbai in 2010, making it the most populous city in India and the second most populous in the world. Mumbai is also India's wealthiest city, considered the commercial capital of the country, and home to the headquarters of multinational companies, major financial institutions, and a flourishing film and television industry. At the southern tip of Marine Drive, Nariman Point is Mumbai's premier business district. With its skyline of commercial high-rises, Nariman Point once had the highest commercial real estate rental rates in the world. The Fort Business District is known for its many street vendors and trendy upscale shops. Fort also hosts numerous financial companies and government offices. The Colaba neighborhood is a popular tourist destination, with sites like the Gateway of India and Colaba Causeway, a major shopping district. South Mumbai is also home to several five-star hotels, like the Oberoi Trident at Nariman Point and the Taj Mahal Palace and Tower in Colaba. The evening of November 26, 2008, was a typical busy Wednesday for the Taj. More than 500 guests were registered at the hotel. Another 500 to 600 were attending functions in banquet halls or sitting down to dinner